Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. I am Pastor Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Johnny Sue is on the ones.
It's just...
Excuse me, let me give Johnny his fair thing. And Johnny Sue is on the ones and twos. Fam, that's what happens when your partner is an Italian man.
No,
a 66% Southern Italian man from New York.
Did we get those shirts?
Long Island,
Jesus
Strong
Christ.
Island. Oh, wow, that would be a great shirt. I'm a 66%.
No, you don't get that shirt. Everybody gets that shirt except you. Yeah,
what about
that's
I'm a
the
civil
whole point.
liberties guy? Well, I don't know if you
get
know
that
this.
one.
I don't
Everybody
know
gets
if you know this. See, that's a
Oh.
Brooklynism of sorts. Like that's what people in Brooklyn, how they talk. They use terms like whatnot. You know.
Apparently, people have a lot to say on you using the term whatnot, you know?
Well, a couple people do, and we know who they are. They're our good friends and stuff.
Our good friends, like Joe Biden is Bernie's good friend, or like our good friends?
Joe Biden is my friend. By the way, we have a lot of people who jumped in right away on the Rokfin 11 out the gate. Let's get some more people. Like, share,
Can I ask
subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, please. Yes, what do you want to
why
ask
do
me?
people born before like 1975 like to put the word "the" in front of everything? The Facebook, the Twitter, the Rokfin.
Because we're older people who give the things they need the respect on. It's not just Rokfin, it's the Rokfin.
I don't know. I don't think there's a the Rokfin, but that's just me. I don't know if Gloria Jones would agree with me or Johnny, but it's just something I noticed. Anyway.
Well, you guys weren't born before 1975, and thanks for pointing that out, that I was born before 1975. People didn't know it was 1975.
At least it wasn't 1775, fam.
Yeah, who knows? The jokes you made, I'll be born in 1575 next time we come out. By the way, we are up also on Twitch. If you're a Twitcher and you like to do the Twitch, go over there and hang out on Twitch.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, people.
Rokfin, we got 16 people. Anna Maris came in, the accidental activist. Ooh. Hi, Shanda. We love you. Trini, or Teeny. Sorry, not Trini. Teeny. Anthony Scannell. What up, Paisan?
Hey.
I concur. Great show, Roar Media. Yes, go over and check out Roar Media. John says Jardula. I don't know what you got to say there, John, but there are 16 people watching. Like, share, subscribe. Guys, we are getting suppressed as can be.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, fam, the like and dislike button are still up there and stuff like that. Have we ever cried about the dislike button? No, we'll get to that down the road. How stupid people can be.
Yeah. But that's, you know why that's done, right? I put it in there, but it's to protect certain people. So
I put my tweets. The tweet I made that I made to this morning about that. We'll talk about that down the road. But I mean, we got to dive into the first section, fam, because last night as I was hunting on YouTube, I got to watch people's rhetoric over and over again in the mainstream media. In the liberal media, if you want to call it. I don't know what they're calling it nowadays and stuff, but I don't know if it's necessarily liberal. I would say it's more of an establishment biased. You know what I'm saying? Their narrative, I wouldn't consider it liberal anymore, just because they've hijacked the word. But.
Yeah, they've hijacked the word. So now, I mean, everything, you know. And it's funny, though. Like, people just have a really hard time figuring me out because, like, I posted a video about the woman in the wheelchair and, like, all the right-wingers were like, ah. But then, like, I'll go back and be like, I think it's wrong that Steve Crowder got censored, which, by the way, Steve Crowder got taken off YouTube. And then they're like, oh, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, the thing is, it's pretty consistent if you think about it. I am against the police state on any level. I don't care if it's Ashley Babbitt who a cop shot. I think that's wrong. Or whether it was George Floyd, what they did, I think that was wrong. I think that was murder. I'm glad that there's a trial to show people that. Some people say, well, there shouldn't be a trial. No, guys, there should be a trial to show the process, right? Even if it was very clear what happened, you still need to have that process. And so it's not difficult to figure out, like, if there's an abuse of power, we should be against it. And this is an abuse of power when you're using and weaponizing a situation that happened to promote a certain narrative and pass legislation that infringes upon the rights of Americans and working class people, directly affecting their right to dissent, their right to have anything that is remotely questioning the state narrative, their right to privacy. that is a problem. And it doesn't matter why it's being done. Nobody's denying that there are racist people in this country. Nobody's denying that. It is the exaggeration of that issue that's being used to really just bring in this cryptic fascism that we're seeing and living
weaponizing
through.
of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, fam.
And that's the whole point, is that it's when it's weaponized and used for political gain, then the real serious cases, get brushed off, and then we pay attention to the stupid ones, or the ones that are kind of twisted and bent for a certain reason. Like the Capitol riots, as they call them, Capitol protests, whatnot, and stuff. But it's kind of funny to see both sides kind of go back and forth, the way things were all summer and stuff. And, they wanted to get a year for pulling down statues.
Right.
And Antifa must go
and now
and stuff.
Florida.
And now it's flipped. And now it's like it's patty cake right now with this whole situation.
Right.
Political patty cake is going on before our very own eyes. And, we have all these people who never were there, who didn't go, who are giving their opinions and stuff. And the language they use, it was very consistent, fam. I'm sure there's an email sent out to all the heads so they can get on the same page, because they used all the same language. As I was looking through videos last night, the same languages, the same kind of ideology, whatnot, you know what I'm saying? And we are getting into some serious dangerous areas here when we're allowing, it to be weaponized, because then it's going to be used against you. Like you said, you mentioned Florida. You did a whole story on Florida. You educated us on this. I didn't realize this was going on. And I thought for sure a person like DeSantis, who's a civil liberties guy, right? Supposedly not, who was saying we're gonna punish big tech for them doing what they're doing to people, for them censoring people. We're gonna hit them with fines. Is then gonna stand behind a bill that's politically motivated and actually taking away civil liberties. It's saying that pretty much if you have more than 3 people, 3 or more people, if you're political, what's that? I'm sorry.
And any of them do anything that they deem to be violent
or outside their political ideology, they're going to arrest you.
It's a riot. Not only that, but they're going to call it a riot, and they're going to amp up the arrest.
That.
And so again, this just goes to show you though that some people, the vast majority of people in the duopoly don't. They might say they care about people of color, liberty, and freedom and all of that, but they only care about it if it comes from the ideology or the echo chamber they agree with, whether it's the Democratic Party, whether it's the Republican Party. And that back and forth is what's keeping people fighting each other instead of the actual system. So what's been happening with the Democratic obsessed push of the insurrection narrative, it's that it's continuing to crumble, right? Okay. And Politico did this article about how after all the accusations and the mainstream media talking about this nonstop, it turns out that most Capitol rioters are unlikely to serve jail time or even have significant, charges stuck to them. And it says right here, even in Politico, this case could embarrass the Biden administration, which has portrayed the January 6th siege as a dire threat to democracy. I mean, nonstop, right? They were talking about it being a dire threat to democracy. So this is just the beginning. I just wanted to read these 2 paragraphs and then point out one other thing. Americans outraged by the storming of Capitol Hill are in for a jarring reality check. Many of those who invaded the halls of Congress on January 6th are likely to get little to no jail time. While public and media attention in recent weeks has been focused on high-profile conspiracy cases against right-wing paramilitary groups like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, the most urgent decisions for prosecutors involve resolving scores of lower-level cases that have clogged DC's federal district court. Okay, so basically, let me read this part right here. My bet
from the folder
is that a lot of these cases will get resolved and probably without prison time or jail time, said Erica Hashimoto, a former federal public defender who is now a law professor at Georgetown. One of the core values of this country is that we can protest if we disagree with our government. Of course, some protests involve criminal acts, but as long as the people who are trying to express their view do not engage in violence, misdemeanors may be more appropriate than felonies. So again, most of these cases are going to be solved without prison time. She's talking about how people how one of the things you can do in this country is protest. And if we disagree, blah, blah, blah. But basically, there's not going to be any sort of backlash beyond a slap on the wrist for most of these people that they're deeming to be the most dangerous threat to American democracy. I mean, they have spent months talking about how the white supremacist domestic terrorist is the number one threat to American democracy. It's not.
Yeah.
But that's what they made it out to be. And the point is, nobody is saying that they don't exist. What people like us are saying is that it was weaponized and exaggerated for their narrative, and now their narrative isn't lining up to the facts, and they're completely glossing over that and focusing on a few key things like what we're going to talk about with the Brian Sicknick, with what we mentioned, and just focused more on dividing people. They're focused more on continuing this whole, propping up of FBI and CIA and the intelligence agencies and making FBI informants out of people. And for what? Yeah. For just, it's all theater.
It is theater. I think a lot of this, fam, when I think about this situation, I think that the Biden administration, even though they say it might be embarrassed, I think they want this shit to, in other words, start to go away. In other words, if they try to get serious sentences for people who entered that Capitol,
right,
more of the story is going to come out in the public eye, and they're going to say this is bullshit, and it's going to look more and more like bullshit. They've got this out here. They've already set their narrative. A lot of people who don't pay attention to what goes on in Congress or in the courts, they already got it's already been told. It's already sunk in their brain.
Right.
They're already like, the deadly attack on our democracy on January 6th. It was disgusting, and it was white supremacists. So I think in a way that this is going to benefit the Biden administration is the further it goes on, the quicker they get rid of it. If they draw out some cases, and if those cases bring up, witnesses that start talking and stuff, it's going to make them look more and more like fools. Right? You know what I'm saying? They still talk about Sicknick. Sicknick was the linchpin. If they can get Sicknick, they can get their narrative out there, keep their narrative. So I think in a way, fam, that this is going to be helpful for the Biden administration, because the more they drag it on, and like we said, if they brought witnesses to court, the more foolish they'll look and stuff. And once again, the people are saying like, well, how can you just punish this ideology when all summer, and those people who what's the word, chastise Black Lives Matter as if they were part of these people setting shit on fire and everything like that. And we've sat in this chair for long and saying it's not a monolith. Everybody who joins this group is not part of the organizers, whatnot, and stuff like that. That conversation will go back and forth.
Right.
And I think
it wasn't a monolith. I mean, from our experience, we still have footage that we haven't released, by the way. We were talking about that yesterday. But it's fam. But it's not a monolith. It's not. And I'm not saying that there weren't violent people, but let's go over what the actual reports have found, because they have found a whole lot of nothing, right? And Glenn Greenwald, of course, did an article back on March 5th, a few weeks ago, right? And I didn't get to go over this article, but let's go over it now really quickly, because he points out a few key points that I think I 100% agree with. As the insurrection narrative crumbles, Democrats cling to it more desperately than ever. If the threat of armed insurrectionists and domestic terrorists is as great as some claim, why do they have to keep lying and peddling crude media fictions about it? And that was a few weeks ago, and now it's even worse, because like we said, now those people aren't really going to get punished. And I'm not saying they should be overly punished with felonies. I don't think so. But what I am saying is, if it was that bad, then the punishment would fit the crime. It doesn't, because it was all a bunch of malarkey. So he says, first we had twice in the last 6 weeks, warnings were issued about imminent grave threats to public safety posed by the same type of right-wing extremists who rioted at the Capitol on January 6th. And both times these warnings ushered in severe security measures, only to prove utterly baseless. First, we had the hysteria over the violence we were told was likely to occur at numerous state capitals on Inauguration Day. Quote, law enforcement and state officials are on high alert for potentially violent protests in the lead up to Inauguration Day, with some state capitals boarded up and others temporarily closed out of Wednesday's ceremony. And an even scarier formulation, the NPR intoned that, quote, the FBI is warning of protests and potential violence in all 50 state capitals ahead of the president-elect's Joe Biden inauguration. The resulting clampdowns were as extreme as the dire warning. Washington, D.C. was militarized more than at any point since the 9/11 attack. We know, we were there. The military was highly visible on the streets, and described the Washington Post the state capitals nationwide lockdown with windows boarded up, National Guard troops deployed, and states of emergency preemptively declared as authorities braced for potential violence Sunday, mimicking the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by a mob of pro-Trump rioters. All of this, said the paper, reflected the anxious state of the country ahead of planned demonstrations. But none of that happened, not even close. And the Washington Post acknowledged this 3 weeks later, saying despite that warnings of violent plots on Inauguration Day, only a smattering of right-wing protesters appeared at the nation's State House in Tallahassee, just 5 armed men wearing the garb of the Boogaloo movement, a loose collection of anti-government groups that say the country is heading for civil war, showed up. Police and National Guard personnel mostly ignored them. Okay, so and then he goes on to talk about how in most places it was pretty much the same thing, the same story. Do you have anything? Anything to comment on?
I mean, no. I mean, I'm just thinking, like, it's just what was all the guff online about? You know what I'm saying? And I mean, I guess I'm just thinking down a rabbit hole of like, okay, did they kind of purposely put that information out there to make sure the state was on guard, or was it just the elites kind of controlling media to say, oh my God, watch what it is, to keep the country scared and divided, or keep their narrative going? I mean, I don't know what to think at this point, because it's been just a crazy wheel of shit going here and there, and nothing really. I remember we have friends who were saying, where are we going to go for the inauguration? Oh, we got to go to Texas. Something's going to go down in Texas. They want to succeed, so we're going to go over there and see what's going on in Texas. Wait, maybe shit's going down in Philadelphia. I heard a bunch of people going to Philadelphia. So we heard all this guff, and I was like, where's this coming from? Who's putting it out there? But as we know, it was a big nothing burger.
It was a big nothing burger, and then he mentions this is like relevant to how, there's those leaders of these cults that are apocalyptic. What is it like? The apocalypse is happening on March 4th, and we're all gonna die. Blah blah blah. That's how the media was with this stuff. Oh, on Inauguration Day, there's gonna be all this violence and blah blah blah. And that's all they talked about. They were putting fear into the minds of people. They were turning people against each other, and then nothing happened, right? It was just paranoia, including what they talked about QAnon. Remember, on March 4th, on my birthday, QAnon was supposed to come, like, Trump was supposed to win somehow and take over the election. And of course, none of that happened. We've since, been talking about for a while now that QAnon was a psyop. And so it all is coming, like, to terms. Like, again, I want to say we will be taking apology letters as well at the Convo Couch, because basically what we've been saying, and this is even from 3 weeks ago, it's like I said, it's worse now, has been happening, guys. Like, the whole thing is crumbling because it was never real. And I can't tell you how many people who normally are of sane mind and have a nuanced conversation about things, when this happened, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe those totally right-wingers. It's like, guys, like, yeah, it was a bunch of right-wingers, but to say that Donald Trump incited an insurrection, that language was entirely false. That didn't happen, and we were there. And so to be like thrown at and be told, oh, like, you don't know what you're talking about, it's like, were you there? No. And you're making these opinions as if you were. And I'm telling you, and like I said, we have unreleased footage. Most people were just looking at what was happening. There were a lot of people like cheering it on, and there were people that were ready to like be violent. But let's actually find exactly what the police found, because they really haven't, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the media has a great way of like highlighting all the racist kind of symbolism or whatnot. Like,
it's real. It was there.
They were there. And the area, when you get up close to the Capitol steps, that was a small sample size of everything that was going on. And I think even when we were looking at some of the footage yesterday, you see a couple people that were just USA. It's like they were trapped there. They didn't even know what the hell was going on. So they just started cheering USA, USA, USA. But once again, and Fam has been out, Johnny and Fee have been out as twice as many rallies than I've been out. And I've been out to 10 times more rallies than anybody I know in my whole family, or in their family. So that can tell you we have a sense of what's going on. I mean, yeah, we'll talk more about this, but I think that the media's done a great job of putting forth, Fam, the racist symbolism, but that just wasn't the case of the whole.
They try to paint it the whole thing like that.
Yeah,
which it wasn't like that.
And beyond the racism, though, and beyond that, it was a planned attempt to overtake the government.
Come on,
like No.
Come on,
like,
guys.
I mean, that it is our most dire present danger.
No way.
And it's not. And so he goes on to say, I detailed several weeks ago that so many of the most harrowing and widespread media claims about the January 6th riot, it's in the folder, provided or proved to be a total fabrications. A pro-Trump mob did not bash Officer Brian Sicknick's skull with a fire extinguisher. Again, that had to be retracted. No protester brought zip ties with them as some premeditated plot to kidnap members of Congress. 2 rioters found them on a table inside. That was probably from the police there, because guess who uses zip ties? Police do.
Officer.
You know how I know? Because I've been arrested for covering a protest, and they use zip ties.
I feel like I have a memory, fam, of seeing protesters with zip ties before they even got inside the Congress. So I don't know.
Colorful ones. I think
I saw some zip ties
one time.
I think because there were cops there that showed up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they were leading the charge a little bit.
Yeah. Well, they're saying they're literally they don't have evidence of zip ties. I mean,
maybe they're trying to save the cops there. I don't know.
Maybe
not Glenn, but you know.
Yeah. And so
out there.
There's no evidence either, because if they had it, they would use it, that anyone tried to assassinate Mike Pence, Mitt Romney,
that's bullshit.
or anyone else.
Yeah,
like, or AOC. Yet the maximalist narrative of an attempted coup or armed insurrection is so crucial to Democrats, regardless of whether it is true. The pointing out these facts deeply infuriates them. It really does. A television clip of mine from last week went viral among furious liberals, calling me a fascist supporter. So yeah, they kept calling him a fascist supporter. They kept calling Glenn Greenwald a fascist for
do you know
this.
What that's like?
When I shared this, oh, Fash Fam. Look, she agrees with Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah,
she must be a fascist.
Fam.
Oh my God. But
that's not going on a shirt, fam. Sorry.
Remember when that day we were like, there were no weapons
we didn't see any weapons
fired or anything, right? People were like, even people whose opinion on Highland Valley were like, oh no, there were weapons. And I'm like, did you see weapons? Because I didn't see any weapons. Guess what? What we know for sure is that no Trump supporter fired any weapon inside the Capitol, and that the FBI seized a grand total of 0 firearms from those it arrested that day. A rather odd state of affairs for an armed insurrection, which is what all the media was calling it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we say that we didn't see weapons, we didn't say, oh, 100% there was no weapons, but we're like, we didn't see any weapons. And even on the videos, I didn't see any weapons either of the videos inside.
Yeah.
And so, but yet all of the media was calling it an armed insurrection, was saying that weapons and blah, blah, blah. And like people just took it. The same people that constantly say we can't trust mainstream media and their narrative were like, oh, yeah, forget all that. On this, yeah, we trust them. Oh, we love the FBI, too. And we love the intelligence agencies. And we love the CIA. Let's all become FBI informants. Yay, FBI, go get them. That's what happened. And that is like, it's almost like a sickness took over, a brainwashing of sorts.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
This guy, Ron Johnson, took so much shit because he was talking about the majority of the people there being loving, kinding people and stuff. Those are the people we went to educate and a lot of people we talked to. If you look at the ellipse, you're going to see a lot of peaceful people not doing anything, just there showing up, whatnot. And, you know what I'm saying, like Johnny said earlier, they're trying to paint the whole fucking thing as if it was what happened, those people that were getting a little crazy at the Capitol. Johnny, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to really focus in on this sentence he had. He said, a television clip of mine, you read some of it, from last week went viral among furious liberals, call me a fascist supporter, even though it did nothing but point out the indisputable facts that Brian Sicknick, whose cause of death remains unknown, that other than Brian Sicknick, the only people who died at the Capitol riot were Trump supporters, and that there are no known cases of the rioters deliberately killing anyone.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's
true. You can't get away from
statement.
that.
That's an indisputable fact right there.
Yeah.
And can I say something too? When you watch all these videos, all the mainstream media, all the local channels, the way they kind of frame this, like, and Sicknick's been dead, cremated. He's, you know what I'm saying? They can't go back and find it. They don't know if the bear spray was the source, but they're still looking into it. So they put this narrative out there. Did I do that right as a newspaper?
Yeah.
They don't know that the bear spray was the source of Sicknick's death, but the FBI is further looking into it.
Tonight at 11.
I mean, they put that narrative out there so people say, oh, it's possible it was the bear spray that killed him. Was it possible it was the fire extinguisher that they had to retract? I mean, they want to do anything to kind of put this whole death of this gentleman and they weaponize, and it's sick that they do that. Okay,
Yeah.
it's disgusting.
It's wrong. It's sad that he died. We should figure out what happened. But you're throwing narratives out there to politicize it is
terrible.
Wrong. So then he goes on to talk about the one lady who died referred to by this FBI official was Ashley Babbitt. I can't tell you how many times, even when people mean well, they said, "Oh yeah, well Ashley Babbitt was killed by a Trumper." No, she wasn't, dude. She was killed by an FBI. A Capitol Police officer. Yeah. That's who she was killed by. Okay. And he also says, those who denounce the excess of McCarthyism, this is an example that I think lays it out really well. We're not insisting that there were no communists in government. Yeah. Those denouncing the excess of the Clinton administration's attempts to seize more surveillance power after the Oklahoma City courting bombing, we're not denying that some anti-government militias may do violence again. Those who objected to the protracted and unhinged assault on civil liberties by the Bush, Cheney, and Obama administration after 9/11 were not arguing that there were no Muslim extremists intent on committing violence. The argument then and the argument now is that the threat was being deliberately inflated and exaggerated and fear stoked and exploited, both for political gain and to justify the placement of more and more powers in the hands of the state. And so
that's very powerful stuff, fam, by the way. I mean, that's so true, because it's not the fact that these things don't exist, it's that it's politicized so they could use it for political gain. And you know what really hurts? What issue suffers more for this type of fucking kind of exaggeration and weaponizing for political gain? Climate change. Because now a lot of the people who they don't necessarily deny climate change. A lot of people are like, yeah, but you're like uber hyper, moving it. You're being what's the word they use? An alarmist. Mm-hmm. You're being an alarmist. You're being an alarmist. You're not being rational and stuff. Like, no, we're not being an alarmist and stuff. But when they are an alarmist in every step of the way for these other issues,
every other issue
they can
suffers.
Strengthen the security state. It goes into everything else, and it makes it harder for the real fights and battles we need to.
You're an alarmist about police brutality. You're an alarmist that about these people. Like, it makes people who might have seen something wrong with reforming something more against it.
Yeah.
Because then they're like, oh, these people are lying, so they don't listen to anything you have to say. It directly affects every issue, whether you're talking about racial justice, economic justice, climate justice, everything that the left really cares about, which is why it's sad to see a lot of the left still cheering on censorship. Yeah. The supposed left, like, becoming little authoritarians, at the same time having anti-fascist on my Twitter handle. Any attack against AOC is authoritarian. Any attack against anything that is against the state narrative, or like, let's say somebody says something vile about trans people, let's take their channel down, or But if you do that, then we can't argue them. Do you not see that's a thing? And then it's a slippery slope, because tomorrow somebody may call you a fascist for no reason, and they might take your shit down. And that's what keeps happening over and over again. Nobody's saying that these people don't exist who are racist, who are mean, who are misogynistic. Nobody's saying that doesn't exist. What we are saying is, if you try to politicize it and weaponize it and call something a terrorist attack equivalent to 9/11 when it isn't, then it makes a joke out of what you're talking about. It's really disrespectful to all the people we've killed abroad, and it literally just it makes it impossible for us to have conversations about what really is happening. And it also, on top of all of that, allows the national security state and the three-letter agencies to continue pushing legislation that completely attacks any sort of semblance of democracy we have. Since the Biden administration took over and since this happened, we have seen nothing but legislation that is authoritarian, that is Orwellian, and just cryptically fascist.
Yeah, I was going to say another area that really it hurts with the weaponizing of the politicalness is when it comes to regulations.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's just like their whole mentality. It's just built from emotion. Oh, this happened, we have to make a law about this. Oh, this happened, we have to strike down this. Oh, this happens, we have to silence that person and stuff. So when you have regulations that are red tape for small businesses that are just so crippling and ridiculous to get over, the real regulations that we need, and when I say real, the ones that are considered, I think Steph Sombrano used to call them protections, like, okay, like you can't burn too many fossil fuels into the fucking air, then what do the people who are non-regulators know? Oh my God, you're hitting us with more regulations all over and over again, so now we gotta let Donald Trump, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna deregulate everything and stuff. Why? Because you were so crazy about it before, you politicized it, you You regulated way too much. Now it's coming back the other way. This is the pendulum that we have going on right now, and the kabuki theater within it. And who suffers? The people.
Right.
The everyday average people. Not the fucking elites, not the people who have money, not the people who are okay. You and I. Our voices are shut down. Our ideas are shut down. We can't get things done that we need to get done because you politicized every single aspect of our government and our laws.
Right. They want a race war. That's what they want. And while you're having this race war and this back and forth attack, they're passing legislation to take away your freedoms. And people are cheering it on because they think that somehow it's going to hurt the right, or it's going to hurt the liberal Antifa and all this stuff. Like it's both. And that's what we have to take ourselves out of this duopoly and stop supporting either party.
Yeah.
Did you have something to say, Johnny?
I was going to say that I really like this one part of the article from Glenn, and it says, he basically says they're taking away our freedoms, right, in the name of stopping these threats, and that is the core formula of authoritarianism. Yeah. You basically expressed that as well. So
yeah, no, it's I like I said, you said it the other day. I mean, it's like I agree so much with Glenn Greenwald when it comes to like civil liberties, when it comes to these things, and he's also getting attacked the same way we are getting attacked. And nothing he is saying is untrue. Everything he is saying is entirely true. And it's coming, he wasn't there on January 6th, but he was able to see through it. We were there. Yeah. And we're telling you that it's not what the media claims it was. And let's go ahead and read some of the super chats or super rays.
Okay, let's do that.
And then we'll have our guest on. Eric London's going to be on to discuss several articles that he's written. And yeah, it's interesting because like we had an interaction before. We didn't agree on what happened on January 6th. We didn't agree on the talking to, Boogaloo Boys or Magnus. But we can have these discussions, and we can have these. We should be able to have these discussions. And what we do agree with Eric is that the Democratic Party is where any sort of semblance for anything leftism will not come from the Democratic Party. Let's read some of these and then bring our guests on.
I got just two quick ones real quick. David Guevara, thank you so much for the Super Raid chat contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. So I got to do that because, I'm saying it's not there. Embled Fate, you have to read. You want me to read it? Okay,
no, you read it.
I'm going to read Embled Fate. Embled Fate's thing because that's what Fiorella would call him, but I'd say Embled Fate. Facebook bans Maduro. See, this is the shit we're talking about.
Are you serious?
How do idiotic liberals not see the danger of Silicon Valley fascist blocking leaders they don't like? I think liberals know their policies and actions are awful, so they block all outside voices, and that is so true. Thank you, Trey Wright. Love you all too as
Thank
well.
You, Trey.
We're going to go over some stuff. They're not YouTube and Big Tech. They ain't getting away from us today. Thomas Collar, appreciate all you do. Thomas, we appreciate the super raise. It really does help us out. And Rokfin Sar, we should have an overthrow. The deep state rally in Langley, Virginia. You just want to get his drone, brother. And across the country on the anniversary of the U.S.-backed coup of a foreign nation. Rokfin Sar, it's a great point. 50 people on the Rokfin, 250 people on the YouTube. Guys, we're being suppressed. Like, share, subscribe, share it. Let's get it out there. Let's have our guest on now.
All right. So, this man's been causing a lot of controversy and turmoil in the world of DSA and progressives. World Socialist website, via this article, not only pointed out the buried DSA interview, which we covered on the show directly from the DSA website. Like, we literally went from the website through the website first. And there's the link if you want to show it, Johnny. There's that link. But most recently, they also exposed how AOC was not who progressives were made to think she was. Some of this information, some of us knew in our activist circles through organizers, pretty much saying, keep it on the DL, but blah, blah, blah. AOC, she wasn't the organizer she said she was. She was barely a Bernie volunteer. She didn't join DSA till later. But it was never so perfectly put in an article as it was this last time. And so let's just go to Eric's tweet real quick before we have him on. And he made this tweet, and this is the most recent, the second most recent. We're going to talk about the Brianna Joy Gray one too. And he said, World Socialist website details political origins of AOC and the role of the Democratic establishment, national security apparatus, and DSA in transforming the young Dem entrepreneur into the false icon of socialism in order to suppress social opposition to capitalism. And I read the article. It was a really well-written article. You read the article as well, Jonny. I thought it was really well written, really well done. Receipts for everything, right? And so we have Eric here. Eric, please, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So we have a couple questions. We wanted to pretty much have a discussion more than like a straight up interview, because we wanted to talk about this today on the show, your article, and kind of break it down. But first, I want to talk about how you've been attacked for exposing this DSA interview. That was a DSA interview done in January, where she called the attacks on Biden privileged and bad faith, and talked about bad faith actors, and people began questioning your work, your integrity. But the fact is, AOC did say those words. Did you in any way feel you misrepresented that interview, and why do you think you're being so viciously attacked?
Well, first of all, like I said, thanks for having me. I will answer that. I do, and I know we're here to talk about AOC. We will. But since the last segment was on January 6th, I just want to quickly state, and then we can move on. But
Sure.
I have to state that, I disagree entirely with that presentation. We can have a discussion on the AOC issue, but this was the president of the United States, who's commander in chief, had control of the military. He was attempting and was saying for months that he was going to overturn the results of a Democratic election. I'm not a Joe Biden fan, but 80 plus million people voted for him. And what's come out in the press, not just the press, but in affidavits of people who were themselves involved, is that fascist groups like the Proud Boys, other groups were actively involved, not only in carrying out First Amendment activity, but in attempting a coup. And Trump held the military back for a critical 199 minutes, which gave this mob almost the ability to kidnap members of Congress. So I have to just state my disagreement completely with your presentation. Those who want to read our perspective can find it. It's very clear at the World Socialist website. But I'll turn now to the question, and I'm actually not.
Let's before we get to AOC, let's just stay here. And while you brought this up, we can talk about this and stuff like that. What did Trump say differently than any of those politicians, the Democratic politicians, have said, like Kamala Harris, like Bernie Sanders, like Ayanna Pressley, like Nancy Pelosi? What did he say differently than any of those that you're insinuating incited a mob?
He said to fascist supporters to stand back and stand by. He called neo-Nazis in Charlottesville very fine people.
That day at the Ellipse.
Well, just let me finish the answer. And then for weeks before the election, he said that the only way the result was going to be fair was if he won. And after he lost fairly staggering margin, he rejected on totally baseless claims the election results, claiming there was election fraud. And then on January 6th, on the day of the certification of the Electoral College, he openly said to his supporters, march to the Capitol. Now, just on AOC, she said that she was, we disagree completely, we fight against her politically. But she made some very important statements at the time about how threatened members of Congress were. And we're trying to fight to explain to the American working class and the international working class what the danger of capitalist politics is. And they have various methods for suppressing the class struggle. We've done a lot of work recently on the Democratic Party strategy and Ocasio-Cortez. But the Trump administration, full of fascists like Stephen Bannon and Miller and these types of human dirt, have been waging unprecedented campaigns against immigrants, xenophobic politics, and their effort is to divide and conquer in a slightly different, but no less ruthless way. So I just, I think it is important to clarify that left politics is based on fighting to expose these crimes. And the Democrats' role in this is very important because they have been engaged in a cover-up of the involvement of the state, of the Pentagon, of very high-level military and intelligence figures in facilitating this attempted coup.
Right. So first of all, obviously we 100% disagree on this. We were there on January 6th. We actually saw the whole thing, not just what the media showed, but everything that happened, everything from the ellipse all the way into the people in the outer rims were there actual oath keepers and Proud Boys and all of these people that you say, yes, there were some of them. But to say that Trump acted in a way to incite violence is a huge claim that if it were a fact, they would have already pounced on it. They would have already arrested all these people. We just went over how none of the things that were said in the media, none of these people were actually in danger. How the only people who died were actual Trump supporters, which is, except Brian Sicknick, which, by the way, our footage is being used in an indictment against these two people who are accused now of spraying bear mace on Ryan Sicknick, right? Nobody's saying that there weren't any bad actors in there, that there weren't bad people. What we are saying is that it was exaggerated to pass these draconian and Orwellian legislation against our civil liberties, against any sort of dissent of questioning the narrative. I'm not going to get into the election part because we've talked at ends here why we think people at the very least had the right to question the election because there was a lack of transparency in our election system. The fact that Nancy Pelosi went out there and said that we had the most democratic election of our time, and then now all of a sudden they're saying that Russia is once again influencing our elections, kind of tells you that they're full of shit, for one, regarding that. But, aside from the election and that you think that was, all nonsense, did they do something wrong? Should they be persecuted? Absolutely. But was it an attempted coup to take over the government in a fascist regime only by the right wing? No. And the thing is, were there high level operatives wanting this to happen? Sure. But that wasn't a partisan thing. That was the establishment. That was the military apparatus. That was the national intelligence agencies working in tandem to make this happen. Because guess what happened after that? Oh, great. Now everybody is a white domestic terrorist. Leftist channels on YouTube and all over are being attacked, not just right-wing channels. All of these things are happening. All these draconian laws are coming into play. So now what we're seeing is, they're backing away from this narrative. And they're like, well, yes, we're going to give them misdemeanors, not felonies. We're going to give them these slaps on the wrist. But they don't have any evidence to show that it was anything more than a bunch of oath keepers, Proud Boys coming together and being like, yeah, we're gonna make sure Trump wins. And sure, that's wrong. But to say that it was what they exaggerated it to be in the media, I think is also it's just an ill display of what actually happened. It's a lie of what actually happened. And it's crazy to me that, playing into that narrative of, fascist Republicans are our number one concern, kind of perpetuates this capitalist state. It perpetuates the existence of the system, because the more we fight, we're fighting the Republican versus Democrat narrative, the less we are fighting the system. I agree, we should fight fascism, but I don't think fascism only comes in a clan hood. Fascism also comes through big tech, to the mass surveillance, and through what's happening right now with this cryptic fascism of the Democratic Party. I see zero difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And you mentioned what the Republican Party has done to immigrants. Well, come on, yeah, look what Joe Biden is doing to these kids in cages. And it's just like, there's no difference. And I think the sooner we see no difference, the quicker we can get to actually fighting this fascist state, because we do live in a fascist state. Let me tell you, dealing with police here, the LAPD, is very similar to dealing with with what the national security state is doing. I fight fascism from the streets all the way to the tippy top. And I think we need to be able to do that without getting bogged down into these narratives that are completely deployed by the three-letter agencies of this country to continue dividing us and fighting us against each other. Do I think a Proud Boy is on my side? No, but I also think that they're a byproduct of the system that has miseducated them and turned them into hating immigrants, into hating people who are different than them. And it's weaponized by the Republican Party the same way the Russiagate narrative is weaponized and the white domestic terrorist narrative is weaponized by the liberals, by the Democratic Party. So I just wanted to say that. And give you.
Well, I disagree.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing I would say on this is just those who are watching who want to read our perspective. There's a perspective article which we wrote on the World Socialist website called 199 Minutes in January, which describes, you may have been on the street, but the decisions were being made behind the closed doors of very powerful people who are attempting this. And those who want to read about the analysis which we put forward, warning of the danger and the historical implications of the collapse of any sort of concept of even bourgeois democracy, should read. I would point them to that perspective. But anyway, we can, we have our differences.
Yeah.
I agree. We can maintain them. I will give you no ground on that, and you can do the same to me. And
absolutely,
and we'll see if it's correct.
Yeah, I just want to just close that out too, since we agree to disagree, and that's what it's all about. Is that I think a lot of people have to realize that the election system itself was the big red flag. We talked to a lot of these people. It wasn't Trump convincing them that the election was stolen. It was the actual procedures and things that happen that have so many red flags across the board. And we need to push for transparent systems, a fair election system, because that's the real thing. I think that was the mechanism that caused all this problem. We can agree to disagree, but let's get on to exposing AOC like we should. So,
why do you feel like you misrepresented AOC in any way? You wrote an article on that interview. And why do you think you were particularly so attacked? Like, they went through every article you wrote, said that, oh, this guy defends Kavanaugh, all these things that were said.
Right. Well, I don't particularly care about that. I will say actually that the response has been overwhelmingly positive, which I think reflects the fact that the experiences of the past several years, the role that the Democratic Party has played, has had a massive impact on the consciousness of millions and millions of working class and young people in this country and around the world. The claim that was made by Bernie Sanders' former press secretary, Brianna Joy Gray, that the World Socialist website was essentially dishonestly pulling quotations, misrepresenting what Ocasio-Cortez said, that our article was an example of bad faith, in her words, it was not supported by any actual, in the video that was produced with Virgil, Texas. There was actually no substantiation whatsoever of journalistic misleading. They have to be, we're journalists. You can't just say someone was lying when you can't prove it. In fact, what we've sought to draw attention to is, what is the meaning of bad faith? You want to talk about bad faith politics? We wrote in our statement today that Wikipedia, I'll just do this quickly. Wikipedia defines bad faith as a sustained form of deception which consists of entertaining or pretending to entertain one set of feelings while acting as if influenced by another. The Democratic Party is the political mastermind of bad faith. For 200 years, they've been carrying out this act. So for someone who was a press secretary for a Democratic senator in a Democratic primary for the Democratic nomination for president, to pull the bad faith card on socialist left, who are using actually just the words of Ocasio-Cortez and drawing out political implications from it. She may disagree with the analysis which we're making, but the fact that they decide to use the label bad faith against the World Socialist website only confirms that we weren't misleading, we weren't misrepresenting anything, because that's, after all, what Ocasio-Cortez wants her people to attack the left on.
Yeah, no, it was just interesting. I haven't seen the video, right, that she did. I think it's a Patreon video, so I don't know if you have a link to it, but I haven't seen the video. I'm just taking your word that this is what she said. But it's interesting to me that a lot of it's just not surprising to me that a lot of the DSA progressive wing of the left is attacking you, because AOC is such a protected figure. She was the one that was supposed to be the one to carry Bernie Sanders' torch and to be the new face of what socialism looks like through the Democratic Party, which we know is just not possible, right? It's not surprising to me at all that that's happening. There's obviously still some people who believe that the Democratic Party is the way to get any leftist ideas out. Just as a follow-up, why do you think that the Democratic Party is just not the mechanism to get there, at all? Is there any chance that you would give credence to somebody that is running under a Democrat that says, no, yes, I will be a socialist when we get in there? Because for me, from what we've seen is every single time, whether it's Sanders, Ocasio, even Nina Turner, they capitulate to the establishment.
Right. Well, the Democratic Party is a capitalist party. It's an imperialist party. It's a party that represents the banks, the corporations, the CIA, the FBI, the Pentagon. It's a party which for 200 years has accumulated a tremendous amount of political experience in enforcing reactionary diktats of the American ruling class while presenting a sort of friendly face and attempting in that way, in total bad faith, to act as though it's actually the torchbearer of the interests of the people of America. Now, you can go back again, like I said, this was the party of slavery, the party of genocide against the Native Americans, the party of the world wars, of the nuclear bombs, Vietnam, Korea. I mean, the death toll of this party is in the tens of millions. Mm-hmm. And so, but let's just look at the last 10 years, because when Barack Obama went out and called himself the candidate of hope and change after popular hostility to the George Bush administration, that was totally bad faith politics. That was the Democratic Party's operation. They took this guy, they said he's an African-American, he's going to be a friend of the oppressed, and he came in and for 8 years waged a ruthless attack on the social conditions of the working class in the United States, just brought absolute devastation to Libya, to Syria, to the Horn of Africa, kept the troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, everybody knows, deported 3 million people from the countries that were devastated by the bipartisan policies of the 1970s and 1980s. So, and you want to talk about genocidal imperialist politics, go study the history of Guatemala and El Salvador and Honduras, where the Obama administration launched a coup in 2009.
Yep.
So anybody who thinks that this party, after 200 years, is just going to realize, oh God, we've been doing it wrong this whole time, we should really be fighting for socialism. It's preposterous. And that doesn't mean that good people weren't tricked by this. If you voted for Sanders, it doesn't mean you're an enemy of socialism. But it does mean that it's time to study this history, because we think that it's absolutely critical. The Socialist Equality Party and the World Socialist website, I just want to state, Brianna Joy Gray said in the interview, there's very few leftists who believe that nothing good can come through the Democratic Party. Well, we don't believe that anything good will come through the Democratic Party, and we're proud that we have held this position.
Yeah, that's why I do tip my hat off to you and the organization, because you guys are true leftists. You believe in your ideology. We will disagree on certain things. And by the way, everything you were saying was so just like hitting home with us. Then the way you circled back to the North Triangle with Honduras and you brought them in there. The only thing I think you left out is that Biden, Biden, I called him. Obama actually upped the troop level in Afghanistan with the surges and stuff, and more men came back and killed themselves. But I want to kind of stay talking about what you were just kind of mentioning right there as far as like DSA members and leftists, whatnot. A lot of DSA members aren't true socialists because they are willing to play ball with the Democratic Party, like an AOC and like a lot of people we see online nowadays. They think that they can obtain goals through the Democratic Party. Why do so many people really buy into this whole I'm a DSA member and stuff like that, but really don't stay true to the values and immediately just excommunicate the Democratic Party and say, no way, we can't do anything there? Because you mentioned yourself, they're the party of the CIA, the FBI, the Pentagon, all these big corporations, which is the true definitions of fascism, which I believe the Democratic Party is a fascist party as well. Why do so many people buy into this and go, oh, I'm a DSA member, I'm a socialist, but really they get so easily duped?
Well, because of public relations campaigns to promote people like Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez. That's the whole bad faith operation of the Democratic Party. They have to, and in the article we did a couple of days ago, they have to transform people like Ocasio-Cortez, who, she was a Ted Kennedy staffer. She was a young entrepreneur. She was getting around in these circles. She has, no history in social struggles or struggles of the working class. And, she was involved in charity work, et cetera, but they picked her up, the Democratic Party did, when they were terrified by the amount of support that Sanders got in 2016, so-called socialist in the land of official anti-communist politics, winning millions of votes. So they have to kind of create a myth around people like her. There will be new ones. Nina Turner's a new one, which they're trying to sort of promote in Ohio. This will not by any means be the last time the Democrats try this. But to answer your question, I actually think, and I've been hearing from a lot of DSA members who are tired of this. They're realizing, I think there's also in this country, internationally, but in the US in particular, a tendency to think all that really matters is activity, is practical activity. It doesn't really matter if I'm campaigning for someone in the Democratic Party or outside of the Democratic Party, because at least I'm doing something. That's a sort of pragmatic politics, which has a real root social foundation in the United States. That's got to be broken with, because when people expend, and they may be very good people, tremendous amounts of energy trying to help left Democrats or progressive Democrats to try and change the Democratic Party, all they end up doing is actually providing support for the Democratic Party's effort to prop itself up as left-wing. Tens of millions of people voted for Bernie Sanders so that he could endorse Hillary Clinton, so that he can endorse Joe Biden, so that Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton could say, we have the most progressive platforms in the history of the Democratic Party, and try to win an election. So I do think that these historical questions are really, they have to be brought front and center. People who are interested in socialism, fine, you're in the DSA, doesn't mean you're an enemy of socialism by any means. But it does mean that you have to really consider the history. And actually, you can interrupt me when you want, but the history of the DSA is absolutely fundamental to the analysis of it. This is an organization that has never breathed a breath of air outside the tent of the Democratic Party. It was born out of a split in 1972, led by Michael Harrington, who was a defender of the right-wing campaign of McGovern in the Democratic Party. And for the next 40 years, the DSA, as it was initially known, was the Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee, then founded itself in 1982. But they were involved in the 1976 Democratic efforts to turn Jimmy Carter to the left, Carter, who ended up deregulating the airline industry, who ended up preparing for Reagan's mass firing of the air traffic controllers in Patco. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And over the course of this period in which the DSA has helped the Democrats present themselves as having a left faction, everybody remembers there's always a primary debate with a Dennis Kucinich or a Howard Dean. But when it comes down to it, they end up having no impact whatsoever on the policies of the institution. And the Democratic Party has traveled 1,000 miles even to the right of where it was in 1972.
Yeah, I mean, the existence of organizations like DSA, in my opinion, perpetuates the Democratic Party's power and stronghold, because they're all about putting progressives and socialists inside the Democratic Party, but they yield no power. There is no actual socialism. They completely ignore foreign policy. They ignore the national security state. And those are the actual things that we need to attack to actually go after the capitalist state, so to speak. But you do mention something that I wanted to point out in your article on AOC's beginnings. You talk about how progressive darling Nomiki Konst has Democratic operative ties and AOC's vetting. And these connections, can you just refresh them so like the audience knows why this is all important to note?
Yeah, sure. On that individual, I would just refer people, the journalist Dan Cohen has done some important work on this, and I think that's credit has to be given. But if you actually look at how Ocasio-Cortez was created, it's very, very telling. And we wrote an article on this a couple of days ago on the World Socialist website. Because actually what she said in the Democratic Left interview of March 19th, for the first time, as I understand it, she acknowledged the timing that she joined the DSA. Now, it was sort of presented as though this was someone who was in the DSA, or at least had been a socialist. Again, we know that she was working for Ted Kennedy, who occupies in no way any political positions that have anything to do with socialism, an ally of the Bush administration on education policy and No Child Left Behind.
Right.
But she joined the DSA, she says, we were able to tell in April, or at the very earliest at the end of March of 2017. And that was at exactly the same time that she was nominated by brand new Congress to be a candidate in New York's 14th congressional district as a Democrat. Now, in the weeks that followed, she gets the endorsement of very critical and powerful institutions within the Democratic Socialists of America in New York City. And so that's how the DSA actually crowning her with the label of socialist, when in fact her own political history had nothing to do with socialist politics. I think at some point, she goes on a road trip, to try and present herself as an activist and this type of thing. But the DSA is really critical because it's there to say this is a socialist. Right. And the Democratic Party says that's exactly correct. This is a socialist. If you're a young person in particular and you're a socialist, this is the party for you. Join us, help us fight. We all get behind the general election candidates no matter what. But sure, do your thing in the primary. You can have this one person in Congress who will do nothing and vote for us on every fundamental issue, like when she supported Nancy Pelosi for speaker. That's how this works. But it's a lesson in the political function of bad faith Democratic Party politics. So when we get attacked as bad faith actors, when Ocasio-Cortez does it, or when Bernie Sanders' national press secretary does it, that's the Democratic Party for you.
Yeah. Well, you're very privileged to be saying those things, Eric. Let me just say that. I want to ask you a question that's kind of been intriguing to me, and I've been wanting to ask somebody from. It's the World Socialist Network, right? What's it called? The World Socialist.
Actually, if I could just say this, because Brianna Joy Gray bungles this on numerous occasions. For anybody who's out there who's going to refer to our absolutely critical political analysis or work on everything, here it is. It's the World Socialist website, WSWS.org. You can call it that. That's our name. You don't call it the New York Newsletter Times. Call us by the name. And that's our
Say
name.
it one more time so the audience can hear.
It's a World Socialist website.
Got it. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the ideology. And I have a kind of quick question because what we've talked about today and stuff. When referring to a lot of the people at the January 6th mob, a lot of the Trumpers, whatnot, calling it a mob instead of a protest, all that sort of thing, and hearing other people from the World Socialist website kind of speak. You're very true to being a socialist, whatnot. But the thing that bothers me is when you describe the Democratic Party, you talked about all the things they were and all the corporations they're tied to and the Pentagon, whatnot, and stuff like that. But then we seem to kind of demonize a Republican Trumper who is anti-immigration because he feels that they're coming, that immigrants are coming to this country, taking away jobs or medicine from American workers, whatnot, and stuff. But when we cast them aside and say that they're fascist, yet there is something strong, I think, about a socialist mentality of workers uniting, and they are actually workers together. Are we sometimes missing the mark when we kind of put them in a box and describe their ideology as just being pure fascist? When, Fiorella was even saying about, a Proud Boy becomes a Proud Boy, or a racist becomes a racist, they're misled and they're misunderstood. Isn't there more miseducated? They're miseducated because they misunderstand what's really going on. And I think a lot of poverty issues kind of exacerbate the situation. Are we missing a chance to get these people, to educate these people, to get them to understand that we're more alike, the working people, than the elites who are actually controlling stuff, when we just flat out call them fascist and say that they're wrong for their ideology?
Well, there's a left-wing appeal to the working class and there's a right-wing appeal to the working class. There is a left and a right. A comrade of mine, Jerry White, appeared on Jimmy Dore's show and opposed this conception of neither left nor right. Donald Trump is a bourgeois politician. He's a capitalist politician. He has a particular political strategy, which is basing himself on the military, the immigration enforcement agencies, the police, who he's always telling to rough people up, the most backward, chauvinistic sentiments of sections of the population. His strategy has a lot in common with historical fascism. It's different in some ways from Mussolini or Hitler, but he's working on, and he knows nothing of these historical issues himself, I'm guessing, but he's working according to a political strategy. Now, as to the issue of the question of workers who may support or vote for Trump, look, the socialists have to make an appeal to the working class that will block them from turning to fascist politics. And the Democratic Party is not doing any of that. Ocasio-Cortez and the squad are not doing any of that. The Socialist Equality Party is calling for the confiscation of the wealth of the billionaires and millionaires, the redistribution of the trillions of dollars which have been robbed from the population of the world into massive jobs programs, immediate wage hikes of, what could be afforded, 50, 60, 70%, free education, free healthcare, the transformation of the economy to provide all the basic needs, including the right to culture, the right to healthcare, the right to education, to workers of all races in every country, no matter what. That's the basis upon which you're going to win workers to left-wing politics, to real socialist politics. I'll say this in relation to this question about Ocasio-Cortez. To the extent that they are seen, and the Democrats are aware of this, to the extent that they are seen as representatives of socialism, if workers look at that and look at those, pathetic, prostrating careerists before Joe Biden's 77-year-old political career, and they think that that's socialism, I wouldn't join that movement. That's why we have to explain what socialism really is. Real socialism is based on the class struggle. It's based on an appeal to the 5 billion members of the working class worldwide. It's a massively powerful political social force, but it's got to be educated, and it's got to be organized, and it's got to be mobilized on the basis of an understanding of the profound historical experiences of the class struggle and of the socialist movement over the course of the last 100 years, and actually 150 years. I'll just make this quick pitch. This Saturday at 1:00, the World Socialist website is going to be holding an event on the 150th anniversary of the Paris Commune. And there are profound contemporary lessons to be drawn from this event. The workers, there was an insurrection, they took control of the city, but because they lacked a party, the bourgeoisie came from Versailles and slaughtered 30,000 workers. It was an incredibly bloody, brutal. Workers were picked up off the street and shot on the spot if they had bruises on their arms, which would indicate that they had fired rifles at the barricades. So anyway, that's why, because I think there's no simple answers to these questions. Obviously, we have differences on the approach to this question. I don't think the Democratic Party is a fascist party. It's a right-wing capitalist party. They've got a certain division of labor. But these are the real historical lessons which I think have to really be brought to bear.
I just a couple last questions before we let you go. So just in responding to you, I do believe there is a left and a right. Okay. The problem right now that we have is we can't even fight within our ideology because the system is crushing everybody. So we're in late stage capitalism, the capitalist system, the imperialist system. Imperialism is capitalism's highest form, right? We're right here, and we can't even yield any power or get any power because we are so divided into fragments of something that doesn't really exist. There is no duopoly, and this is where we disagree, because I believe the Democratic Party is equally as fascist as the Republican Party, because they have done the exact same thing that these Republicans have done. The difference is the language the Republicans use is outright, just very caustic and bitter. And the Democrats hide behind superfluous decorative language. And that's the only difference I see. The problem right now that we have is that the working class is suffering as a whole, whether they're a Republican, Democrat, whatever. If we don't create an actual opposition, leftist, anti-imperialist movement that actually brings people together behind workers, those people that feel mistreated, downtrodden, and completely just ignored by the two-party system are going to turn into an actual fascist party. That's the danger that we have. And if we don't grab those people, if we say, oh, you're all fascist, you're all this, then yes, then that's going to happen. They're going to turn into this right-wing fascist party. But either way, then we're going to be fighting between ideology rather than the class struggle. So while I think that some people are beyond repent, I think some people are racist and they're vile and they're awful. I mean, we even in Los Angeles, there's racism everywhere. You experience it all the time. And that's something that is true. There's no denying that exists. But that racism is perpetuated by the class struggle, the economic differences. We recently interviewed a woman who was a Black Panther named Reverend Annie Chambers, and she spoke about how when she was young, she was poor, right? She was a black and she was poor, and she also spoke about when she went into these areas in it was like the Mid-Atlantic, right? And she saw other poverty. She saw white people. She's like, they were poor. Like, they were really, really poor. And then that's when she started seeing this poverty affects everybody. So in our struggle of the working class, we sometimes have to, at the very least, talk to people we disagree with. Like, I'm talking to you, we don't agree on everything. I have zero problems talking to somebody that is anti-government but might not be a leftist, and showing them what is a different version of a leftist, because they might think AOC is a leftist and she's not, and we know she's not. So there's a misrepresentation of the left, and if we allow these people to continue thinking that AOC and Kamala Harris and Biden are all commies, instead of educating them and saying that's not the true left. Look, what we want is workers' rights. We want social safety nets. We want all these things. And freedom for you to have to say what you want to say, to have your own personal freedoms, to privacy and all these things. We can bring more people to our side. And I don't think that means that you're going to necessarily be fighting alongside a Klans member. I don't think anybody here has advocated that, although that has happened. And that's what we will be talking about in this interview we'll release. I'm not advocating for people to do that. But there are people who are friends of mine who will literally go to a Trump rally and talk about Julian Assange and say, look, I don't agree with you on your politics, but here, Julian Assange is in jail for exposing U.S. war crimes. This is Julian Assange. Do you know about him? Oh yeah, free Assange, WikiLeaks. Okay. And at the very least, you make those connections. That doesn't mean this person all of a sudden turns into a Proud Boy. And so I think what I'm trying to say in all this rambling is that we have to fight to have people on our side of the workers, of the people who actually care to fix things. Because if we don't do it, somebody else is going to come along. And that is how Nazi Germany came about. You know, there were a lot of poor people who felt completely left out. And I don't want to get there, which is why I don't think we should throw everybody out. I think we should talk to people, and some of them are going to come to our side. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, I'll say two things, mainly in response. First of all, since you brought up the example of Nazi Germany, there are so many. This is why, from the standpoint of socialists, the study of history is not an academic or an abstract exercise. It's what can we extract from the historical experiences of the struggles of the working class that we can then bring to bear and transform into the revolutionary activity of the present. So you referenced Nazi Germany, and in fact, the fundamental reason for the rise of Hitler, the fact that he was able to come to power, was because of the policies of the Stalinist Communist Party in Germany over the course of the years before 1932-33. And in fact, just because this issue has come up, one of the absolutely devastating mistakes, and Leon Trotsky, we're Trotskyists,
right?
Socialist Equality Party is Trotskyist, and Trotsky was scathing in his denunciations of the orientation which the Stalinists made to German nationalist sentiment. There are a number of events. I'm not going to make a very, very long-winded answer right here on it. Those who are watching should look up the role played by Karl Radek, at that point a representative of the Stalinist Comintern, who actually proposed a number of debates between the communists and the fascists. There was the Schlageter affair, which people can look up in the Ruhr crisis, when the Communist Party made a really devastating mistake in attempting to minimize the danger posed by the fascists and in orienting themselves in trying to appeal through a sort of sleight of hand to present themselves as though somehow they were the real nationalists. And actually, famously, the position of the Stalinists right before Hitler came to power was, don't worry, this is not that big of a deal. Hitler will expose himself in a number of months, and after Hitler, us. After Hitler, the Communist Party will come to power and make everything right. Well, we know how that ended in the Holocaust, in the gas chambers. So we think that the best way to fight to win over workers, including those who may have confusion on the immigration issue, on Trump, is to propose to them, not through sort of saying, oh, look, we agree with you on nationalism, or we agree with you on this, or look how much we have in common, but to put forward as clearly as possible the socialist program of the class struggle, which is to unite workers of all races, of all nationalities, in a full frontal attack on the commanding heights of the capitalist world economy and the imperialist war machine. And we have very great confidence that that is the program which is going to bring together all sorts of people. In fact, James Cannon, who was this is just a quick anecdote, who was the leader of the Trotskyist movement in the United States and the Socialist Workers' Party for many years, had a famous quotation where he said, it was the strike movement of the 1930s which brought together the more backward Black workers from the South who had been used as strike breakers, and the hillbillies the white hillbillies of Virginia and the Carolinas. And he said that it was forged in the class struggle. Together on the picket line, the white worker put down the burning cross of the KKK and put on the pin of the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Now, that to us is really the job of a socialist, is to say what is. That's what we believe. There's this issue, since you raised it, and feel free to cut me off if you need to, but you raised the issue of the racial divisions that the Democratic Party attempts to foster through identity politics. Mm-hmm. It's very important that Ocasio-Cortez, in that interview, calls class essentialists people who deprioritize human rights. That is imperialist speak. It is American anti-communism, and it is an indication of what they're really afraid of. The Socialist Equality Party opposes racial identity politics. We recognize racism is historically rooted in the emergence of the capitalist system, but the only way to oppose any discrimination in any form is to unite workers of all races, not to buy into the garbage of the New York Times' 1619 project, the Democratic Party's, identity politics. We know what that gets you. It gets you women generals, who drop bombs on Libya, or Hillary Clinton, laughing about the murder of Muammar Gaddafi. So I just wanted to clarify that point since you brought it up.
Jonny, did you have any question? No.
Well, that's it for me. You're done, right? I was just going to say thank you for coming on, and I just want to make one last statement. I really adhere to what you're saying and stuff like that. I still think there is a wedge there too as well. When we say that the Democratic Party isn't fascist, but these people are fascist, I think that could be part of the wedge, I think, that would stop us from really uniting people. We have to call them for what they are. The true definition of fascism is by Benito Mussolini, who said the states merging with the corporations. And Joe Biden got 16 million from big tech. Donald Trump got less than $1 million. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
I just want to say one more thing that isn't considered in historical context because it wasn't around is big tech. We have the internet. We have a mass surveillance state that is not considered. I feel like it's a hindrance in a lot of socialist movements that I find like there's not enough focus on that. And I understand because it's not historical because we've never had this technology until now. But I think that's going to play a lot into how we combat this fascism, because not only is the fascism on the ground now, it is through the internet. It is through big tech and mass surveillance and Alphabet and Google and YouTube, who continuously, squashes any sort of dissenting opinion. And so when we're fighting in this class struggle, we're going to have to take in big tech and mass surveillance into that, which is really...
Don't forget the U.S. government.
Which is what's happening right now. Did you have something to say, Jonny? Okay.
Eric, I was wondering if y'all had any articles on like the transparency of elections or anything like that, or any of the election systems like that.
Are you referring specifically to the 2020 election?
I'm referring to any of the elections, because right now, like most elections are run with proprietary software.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, to the extent you're asking about 2020, I just don't think there was any of it. We've studied this. There's not really evidence of massive voter fraud. I would say on the question of election, if you want, the 2000 election was in many ways a precursor to the 2020 events and the January 6th events, because there you had a situation where the Democratic Party clearly won the election. Al Gore won Florida. Everybody knows he won the popular vote by 500,000. And the Democratic Party, instead of making an appeal to the masses of people to defend the right to vote, they just completely gave up. They capitulated to the Bush administration. They peacefully passed the torch of power, paved the way for the war in Iraq. And again, because I think that's more the dynamic that you have to get at. The Democratic Party is in no way committed to the defense of democratic rights. Its greatest fear is social opposition from below. That's why the more pressure within the Democratic Party doesn't move the party to the left. It moves them to crash down on opposition all the harder. That's the lesson from Sanders. That's the lesson from Ocasio-Cortez. So anyway, I do appreciate you having us on. Everybody should look at the World Socialist website. You'll see what we were writing about January 6th and Trump. But, we can continue we'll see whose perspective prevails. I think it will be ours, but I do appreciate the chance to be on.
Do you recognize that there are proprietary software election systems?
I don't. What is that?
You haven't done research on that? I invite you to go research, like the black box voting and just like how the tally systems work. Like here in Los Angeles, like I've done on the ground like coverage and journalism on that. Basically,
I think the greater threat to democracy is that there's two parties. They're fundamentally the same. The masses of working people have no vote whatsoever in the elections. Third parties like ourselves were booted off the ballot in state after state in this last election. So the system is completely anti-democratic. I don't think you need to look at the type of software to make that determination. But let's see whose perspective.
Yeah, you don't. But just you mentioned the 2000 election, and it's like that it was absolutely. I agree. Al Gore won the election. But since we can't rely, even that just kind of proves the point that people have a right to question elections. If that happened then, and then Bernie Sanders' primary, of course, through WikiLeaks, we found out that Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party were involved. And then the New York Times admitted that there was a cabal, their words, a cabal of elites that helped move the election a certain way in favor of Biden. I think it's fair to question, and I think more people should be doing that, because it does hurt third parties like yourselves. It hurts the Green Party. It hurts independents. It hurts any sort of opposition to the establishment. And I'm frankly at the point where we're not, I don't see a way through the electoral process at this point. I see direct action being the most necessary need right now, because the election would have to be completely revolutionized. Like, our elections are completely non-transparent. They're done by proprietary software, as he says. We've done extensive research here in California. At the very least, there is absolutely no transparency. And so it's like, when you can't vote your way out of this, right? We can't. So what is the next step then? What is the next solution? Well, I just don't see any other step other than direct action and trying to move forward in that way. And I think that's what's required. We'll see what happens. But Eric, thank you for coming on. Tell people where they can find you one more time.
Go to the World Socialist website. You can find us.
That's the one. That's the one. And I'm glad we can agree to disagree. We'll have you on again. We'll talk about this some more. Maybe we can have a private chat too. I can tell you about elections. You can tell me about your thing on January 6th, where we can get, because I think we could talk about this subject for hours and stuff like that. But I do appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for coming on.
You know, doing what you do, my friend.
Appreciate it.
Great article.
Thanks for having me.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so see, we have everybody on. We don't have to agree with everybody that we have on, and there's different aspects of socialism too that I subscribe to than he subscribes to. It's different, but again, like, I think it's important to have these conversations, because, like I said, one of the weaknesses in a lot of leftist movements I find are the elections and the national security state, which I think the national security state apparatus, big tech, that's not through the fault of necessarily anybody, because the internet has just completely changed the way we do things. It's completely just, it's a new thing, like what we're dealing with now with YouTube and Google and big tech. It's something that's come about in the last few years that people didn't have to consider back during Trotsky's time or Marx's time. So that none of that is there for historical context. Everything else is, but this is something new that we're going to have to figure out how to deal with ourselves.
Yeah. And also we talked about, not only is it just emerging with the states, which is a form of fascism, you know what I'm saying? And that's the biggest beef I have with the World Socialist website and the people who do come on, that gentleman who did go on, Jimmy Dore. It's like, oh, the right wingers, they're fascists, whatnot, and stuff like that. And everything's got to happen on the left.
Right. Yeah, it's like the characterization.
Yeah,
they're bad, right?
Exactly.
Like, we can't reform those people. That's basically what they're saying. But I don't know.
Johnny, you had a conversation. Remember when we went that night and there was the Proud Boys kind of like little thing going on in the hotel? Really wasn't Proud Boys, but you kind of got in there and you started talking to this gentleman. Right, you know what I'm saying, and I can see you guys talking. It was a
fireman or something.
It was a fireman and stuff, and obviously a big Trump supporter and stuff. And I can see, and we talked about after, and you guys were having differences of opinion, but you were kind of trying to persuade him of your opinion, whatnot, and stuff like that. And that's what I want to see. To me, and I don't want to get smacked in the face for saying that, but the misled, just not. I mean, I believe he's so wrong in ideology, this Trump person, whatnot, who is anti-immigration and stuff like that, and is just smeared off as a racist, can't be reformed kind of person, when I believe that he is less harmful than the Democratic crypto-fascist leadership that is not only just in bed with big tech and stuff like that, but also putting forth a narrative of one voice, which is also a very big fascist tactic, when they're suppressing other dissenting voices and putting their voice, is much more dangerous. Like I said, Raytheon kills more people, innocent people, every day than the Proud Boys ever will. Does that mean we go in a line with the Proud Boys and stuff like that? No, we do try to reform them in areas we can and get them to see our side and stuff like that, and understand that they've been duped by the whole system.
Break that empire education.
Yeah, you got to
a lot of empire education. Yeah, and also just the fact that what you just said too that we didn't mention is this, like, it's coming from a lack of education and misinformation, and like, if we put them all aside, they're never going to hear like the truth. They're never going to be educated. And I think if you're going to call the Republican Party a bunch of fascists, the Democratic Party is also a bunch of fascists. And the fact is, your neighbor is less of your enemy, even if they are a Trump supporter, or even if they are a Biden supporter. They're less of your enemy than the entire, not just the Democratic Party, but the Republican Party, the establishment, the oligarchy that is keeping us all down. They're our enemy more than all these people are, more than the people on Capitol who rioted on January 6th, and more than any of these people that say stupid things that are these liberals, bourgeois liberals. Yeah, those are your enemies, but your biggest enemy is the 1%. Your biggest enemy is the oligarchy. And that's what we have to keep in mind, and not let these, our focus go to, we have to fight all just these, however many hundreds of Nazis exist in the United States, because they do. There's actual Klan members and Nazis. But do they yield the power that somebody in the national security state apparatus does? No. And so we have to regain our focus, and I think that's the fundamental disagreement. I think is where does our focus go, and it doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that we're okaying somebody being racist. Like, if somebody was being racist to Jonny, I'm gonna be pissed off. I'm not gonna let that happen, right? But like, if somebody, it's not, that doesn't mean that we completely just stop talking or put him in an island and get rid of him. Like, I think that we have to figure out, what are we going to do with people who are miseducated? We're just going to reprogram them.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
What the Dore gentleman said, who went and talked to the KKK, right? Like, what he said, that these are, really miseducated people.
Very.
He reformed people. He got people to drop. Yeah, Daryl Davis.
Yeah. How can you hate me if you don't know me?
Exactly. Yeah. So the big thing that for me in that last interview was, I wonder if they have anything on election integrity.
They don't.
Or election transparency, because that's a big deal to me.
He didn't recognize it, Johnny.
To us, I mean, to us, that's a big deal.
Yeah. We've seen it.
You can't deny it.
We've seen it
firsthand.
Yeah.
It's in our trailer.
He pivoted right to the whole, the whole system itself is bad. It's awful.
Which it is.
It doesn't represent
But how does it get like that?
Exactly. And if you have a good candidate from the Socialist website, whatever, or a real true socialist candidate that you're running in a small district, and he has a chance to win because he's got a populist mindset, people like them. If that system is rigged, you're never going to get forth. You're never going to move forward. That's why Fiorella is like, I'm done with the whole system right now, because you can't even elect a person fairly. And that's the whole thing. You could sit here and say, well, we found no evidence of fraud. Well, you have no evidence that it was right, because you don't understand the system. If you understand how the votes come in, if you understand how it's counted, how it's tabulated, the things that have happened.
There's no audits.
There's no real audits.
There's just logic and accuracy to
It's just ridiculous. Then you can never stand behind an actual person and say they actually won, because the system doesn't allow you to do that. You have to just take what they tell you. Black box voting. Sorry.
And all the historical context of Bush versus Gore, even before that, of what happened in several elections since the 1940s was when Henry Wallace and all of that happened, and even after that with Bernie Sanders twice. I mean, this happens all the time. It's nothing new. And so if we don't have a transparent system, there's no way we can prove that it's transparent then. If like, how can we prove on either end? So again, we go back to the same thing. We're not going to vote our way out of this if we can't fully, fairly vote our way out of this, right? So
I should have asked him about Assange. I forgot to ask him about Assange.
I think they have said a couple things on Julian Assange, but I haven't.
Crypto too.
Yeah.
Like, his mind's on crypto.
So maybe people forgot that his colleague, he said, is Jerry.
Jerry
was on Jimmy Dore, and that's when he came on, was
right after the Boogaloo Boy.
This is why the left fails, is what Jimmy says, and I completely agree with Jimmy in this whole segment.
Yeah.
It was class solidarity or deplorables, the left's failed messaging. So and that was seen as well just in our interview. So
well, I was trying to bring that point.
That was interesting.
At a lesser degree, at a lesser degree, at a more nuanced conversational ability than the other guy. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it's the same type of position. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Not talk to Magnus because he's not an anti-capitalist? Like, look, we have fundamental disagreements. I do with Magnus. Like, I believe I'm not a capitalist. I say it every day. I hate capitalism. I think capitalism is destroying the world, this country, and imperialism, of course, in its highest form, right? But I 100% I'm firmly in that belief, and I will defend that belief forever. That doesn't mean that I can't talk to somebody that understands that the working class is screwed, just has a different way of solving it, and maybe I can bring them on to my side. Maybe eventually, we're going to have a social market, which is what I believe is the next step, I think, for that would be possible here in America, is market socialism, where nobody's saying you're not going to have, and I don't think America is ready for abolishing property or abolishing private choice or any of those things. There are different forms of communism, different forms of socialism. People need to be educated on. He's a Trotskyist, our last guest. Yeah. I'm not a Trotskyist. And so there's a difference even in the left ideology of how we view things, right? And so it's right now we can't even have those arguments, though, is my point, because we have no power to have those arguments. And even in England, they have different parties and they argue amongst each other in a multi-party system. They have a parliament. We can't even do that because we're not allowed to. We have two parties and it's one big aisle. So in order to get to that ability to argue with him, and let's say he becomes a congressperson for the Trotsky party and I become a congressperson for the whatever, a council communist party, we're going to have differences, but we can't get to that point because we're not allowed to have any power or any fairness of democracy. So before we do that, before we are able to argue our ideologies, we need to come together as a working class first to be allowed to have these debates, which we are no longer allowed to have either in public really at all. And now on the internet, it's getting harder and harder to have these conversations.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. I think one of the biggest points you made, fam, during that interview is talking about the internet is here now. We have to adapt our politics and our ideologies to modern times. It's a different world. You know what I'm saying? Ever since the microchip came out and ever since they've been able to split the atom, it's been a different type of world. And that's why hopefully those UFOs will come down and save us. Great stuff there, guys, by the way. 74 people watching on the Rokfin. We got a couple Super Rays. Patrick S., thank you so much for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. Rokfin Czar says, when you're against something, when the other side does it, but not when your side does it, you are in favor of such a thing. For example, Democrats are actually in favor of kids in cages, bombing Syria, etc., which is sick. P.S. Let's stop talking about a general strike and get in the streets before it's too late. Hashtag free Assange.
Hashtag that's what we do.
Hashtag let's go for it. By the way, it was over 400 people were watching on the YouTubes. Get on over to the Rokfin, ROKFIN. Sign up on your FM dial. We almost have 13,000 subscribers, and we need more.
So, guys, just a reminder, we don't have a YouTube super chat because we're demonetized. So if you want to send a super chat, we have a PayPal. We have the Streamlabs. You guys can send a question if you want to ask us. I would like to hear from the audience about what you guys thought about that interview and that interaction. We have all kinds of people on, and I love having a back and forth. I don't know if you do.
Well, I always do. I do. It was funny, dude, because it was kind of there was a little kind of reminiscence of Jimmy was talking to the Boogaloo Boy, then he brought in a World Socialist guy.
Yeah.
We were talking about what happened on January 6th, and then we brought him on, and he was so dead set against what he was oh, no.
Yeah, it was very similar. I was like, oh, okay, great.
We didn't even get that deep into it because I could get deep into it. And same thing with the election thing. We didn't get deep into that as well and stuff.
Well, there's no point when it's just you have to know what you're talking about for me to debate you on elections, right? I there's just no way. But there are some things you're not going to agree on, so it's kind of you can talk it all out, but you obviously after a few discussions you're okay, we're not going to agree on that, and that's fine. That should be everybody's policy. You're not what are we, when you debated that Republican, all these things, but people should be allowed to hear both sides of the opinion, the aisle, and understand, here, I agree with this person or I agree with that person. That's the whole point of having a democracy, which we don't have anymore, but we barely have because we can't even, we get shut down every time. And I think more people need to have those conversations. If I only invited people that I agree with on 90% of things or 95% of things, we wouldn't have most people on.
Yeah. Well, fam, let's talk about democratic fascism.
Yes.
Because you got a little story here. You know what I'm saying? That. I remember during the campaign trail. I remember before that. I remember all the tweets. Donald Trump is awful. He's a fascist. He's putting kings in cages. This is terrible. Oh, But what's going on now, fam?
So, fam. There's more leaks on what's happening behind the scenes with the kids in cages, and people are like, well, cages are bars. Okay, no. A cage is any place you're not allowed to be in to leave. Like, you can't leave. If you're in a building and you can't leave, you're in cage, imprisoned. Okay, so if you want to be specific, imprisoned, whatever. So now we're trying to change the words of it doesn't have bars, so it's not a cage. But more than 4,000 migrants, and this is from the New York Post because they're one of the few outlets actually reporting on this. Many children held in cramped Texas tent facilities. So the main detention facility for these migrant children is overcrowded in a tent structure, which is currently packed with more than 4,000 people, despite get this, a 250 person capacity.
That's not too much, fam.
Okay.
Come on.
250 person capacity, 4,000 people. That's I don't know, Johnny math, do the math, but that's a whole lot.
That's 3,750 people too much, fam.
And so Pasta's actually really good at math, guys. Like, he's actually a math whiz. Like, no, really, seriously. Like,
I can't read the English language, even though I tried to speak it.
So
But I'm better at math.
He's like really quickly.
I have
he's
a
like
bookie
a calculator.
lifestyle. I was involved in gambling at a little kid. You had to figure out the odds.
It's crazy to me. I'm like, what? I was never great at math. I had to study a lot for math, but so it's really bad. And I think at another point it was like a 17% or 700% over capacity. We're gonna go over some tweets, but this is not even counting COVID rates, right? Because if you're talking about COVID capacity, right? For instance, restaurants in LA right now have to have like a 25% capacity. You can't have more than that, because it's not COVID safe or whatever. But
the immigrants, let's just shove them in there. I mean,
as if COVID doesn't exist. I mean, so which is it, right? Yeah. Like which is it? You're being complete and total hypocrites. And
I don't understand why they can't have buses come pick these kids up, take them to soccer fields, let them play, let them get out there and stuff like that. So we have, what I'm saying, like all this shit going on. How can we not be humane? I mean, we have so much space and area where we can do things. I mean,
so according to the AP, they double confirmed. Yeah, the AP is the one that said 4,100 migrants in a location set for 250. The youngest of them are kept in a large playpen, as we just saw, like that one right there.
But they're not playing.
No,
they're just sitting around a rainbow fence doing nothing.
So they're processed in the tent before being hauled to the Department of Health and Human Services shelters and then placed with relatives or sponsors. These journalists observed these minors being processed last Tuesday. The kids were first taken to small rooms inside the tents for health assessments, including checks for lice, scabies, fever, and other ailments. No COVID-19 test was administered unless the child showed symptoms of the virus. The kids also underwent psychological evaluation and
that's stupid, right?
All
there.
That stuff,
right? That's dumb. I mean, why can't they give all the kids tests? I mean,
so it gets worse, fam, because they were then taken to a second intake room where they were given notices to appear in immigrant court. These minors. Kids who had contact in the U.S. were allowed to speak with that person on the phone. Children were given bracelets and a barcode that showed a history of when they had showered and had any medical conditions. I mean, a bracelet and a barcode?
What is
Do
this,
you
Auschwitz?
See?
Jesus,
guys,
Christmas.
But no, the Democratic Party is not a fascist party. Come on, guys. Come on.
Come on, man.
I mean, we live in this society. It's the whole government is turning into a totalitarian, fascist government. And so now we have this tweet
by your good friend.
Freaking Ted Cruz, out of all people. Why are you making me post Ted Cruz tweets, Democrats? So he said, these are the Biden cages, faces blurred, thousands of kids in the midst of a pandemic crammed at 1,500%
capacity.
This is just one of the, quote, pods, this is what they call them, at Donna. There are 7 more equally full. So this is just some pictures of these pods.
There's no room in these pods. You can't
Look
even
at
walk.
How they're, oh, God, I'm so disgusted by this, guys.
Where's AOC? She's not out there crying. Not out there crying. Remember, she did the tears and whatnot.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about
All right, good. I don't want
to. This is disgusting. at how crammed they are. Like, I haven't seen animals crammed like that in a zoo. At least that's nice. And they had a heart in one of the other ones.
Yeah. Maybe they'll have Grover
Assholes.
come make an appearance
With Blinken.
With Blinken.
Yeah.
Grover can talk
It's
to the
disgusting,
kids.
guys. I mean, I can't let this get to me, but it's disgusting. It's just awful. Like, and we don't even treat animals like this. Like, we're vegans. But I mean, in general,
I'm
people
about to cry.
People don't treat animals like this, right? Like, these are human beings. These are kids who don't even have their parents with them. I mean, Johnny, do you have anything to say on that?
Remember when you and Johnny went down to the border and the little kid who came up and hugged you guys and said, Johnny, remember that? And he says, watch me play or watch me do something. And I'm just about.
No, it's revolting, man.
It's terrible.
It's absolutely disgusting. And
it was our foreign policy.
It was our foreign
policy.
The foreign policy under the Democrats, under the fascist Democrats.
Yeah,
under the fascist Democrats.
And then the fascist Republicans that came right behind them, too.
They just continued.
The establishment is fascism.
That's it. They are. And we're fighting. We have to fight it.
Military, industrial complex.
Yep. National security apparatus.
This is why we have our Defund the Pentagon shirts that are going to be coming out here soon. So.
Yeah. And I want to go through this thread by Nicole Skanga.
Skanga?
I don't know. That's difficult.
Skanga.
That's a difficult last
Nicole
name.
Skanga.
She has a thread, and she says, reporters toured the temporary border facility in Dore, Texas today. The Biden administration allowed pooled coverage for the first time. We saw a pod designed for 32 migrant children under CDC guidelines, now holding 615. So again, all the pods are overinflated. The facility is at 1,700% pandemic capacity. So there's
Joe
the
Biden
picture.
said he's acting fast to open up something that whatever. I mean, I hope he's still working on it.
Unaccompanied migrant children ages 4 months to 9 years old are now being held in the recreational area around the clock because there's just no room for them in the dormitory areas. So they're being held in little mini cages inside another cage, inside a bigger cage. The outdoor recreational area is being used to stage COVID testing before unaccompanied migrant children are transferred to HHS facilities. We counted more than 50 COVID positive and largely asymptomatic kids waiting for their quarantine bus right next to a soccer game. More than 2,000 migrants at the temporary processing facility in Dore, Texas have been here for over the legal limit of 72 hours. Senior CBP officials told reporters more than 1,200 migrants are processed and waiting to be transferred to HHS facilities. HHS has nowhere to put them. At least 39 unaccompanied minor children have been in the temporary processing facility for more than 15 days. Acting Executive Officer, or RGV Operational Programs Division, Oscar Escamilla, told reporters the legal limit is 72 hours. Raul Ortiz, Deputy Chief of the U.S. Border Patrol, told reporters CBP agents now see, quote, self-separation by families expelled under Title 42. Unaccompanied migrant children recross the border without their parents so they can seek legal asylum within the United States. So that's what's happening. They're just sending these kids by themselves, which is, of course, extremely, dangerous, right? But that is how desperate people are. And if you continue under that tweet, Deputy Chief of the U.S. Patrol, Raul Ortiz, told reporters that the CBP anticipates more than 1 million encounters of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border in FY 2020 alone. And it costs $6.1 million to stand up to the processing facility in Dore, Texas. According to Acting Executive Officer Oscar Escamilla, it should cost $6 million per month for CBP to run the facility at its 250-person capacity. It's so overcrowded that it costs $16 million per month. That's a lot of money. Pool reporters stumbled upon 27 unaccompanied migrant children and young families outside of Mission, Texas. One mother of 2-month-old recounted to CBS Mireya how she fled Guatemala in a raft because there was just too much violence and poverty to stay. Reporters passed the Anzalduas International Bridge in Mission, Texas, where dozens of migrants still appeared to be assembled underneath. We asked to stop, but were not permitted. Border agents told us CBP does not intend to hold migrants there for more than a couple of hours. So there's a couple more pictures there. There's an article by CBS News that actually talks about the inside of a Border Patrol migrant holding facility at 1640% capacity. And there's more videos and stuff you guys can watch. At least CBS was allowed to go in there and get some footage, which, I mean, they had to at some point. All of the media was demanding, like, okay, let us see, because this is like a little ridiculous now. I would like to go to a facility as well. I think it's important that more and more people demand, more and more media actually start going there, because we cannot let this administration get away with their portrayal of complete lies that Biden is getting children out of poverty, that Biden is cutting poverty in half, that Biden is helping immigrant children. The same thing that AOC has been pushing, that, oh, these people, if you say nothing has changed, then you don't care about, the immigrants and people of color. What
That's
exactly has fucking changed?
shit.
This is why that interview pissed so many of us off, because she's a freaking liar, and she's a freaking liar, and she's gaslighting. And Rebecca Parsons said, Biden deported 26,248 people in his first month. Trump deported an average of 21,667 people per month. There are 12,000 kids in cages right now. Under Trump, the highest was 2,600. Trump was a racist, immoral president, but let's not pretend all of our problems have vanished under Biden. Again, let's not pretend Biden isn't also a racist, immoral president. I would even go further and say that, right? Like, let's not pretend that Biden is, I mean, look at his numbers compared to Trump. I'm not saying this to defend Trump. I'm saying, oh my God, like, this was used to elect Biden, and look what Biden is doing. Like,
exactly.
As an immigrant, it's just, to me, it's extremely offensive when people say things like, you are helping, the Republicans and all this bullshit that they say. It's like, you guys don't know the first fucking thing about being an immigrant, number one. Johnny, did you have something to say?
Yeah, this shit just needs to stop. And what's the solution, man? I mean,
well, what we've been trying to do for how long, is talk about our foreign policy leading to a migrant problem in the first place. There wouldn't be so many people coming here. It wouldn't be like that lady described in
well, that's the thing, yeah.
Guatemala.
The right-wingers who are miseducated, they say, well, why are they coming here? Why would they send their kids? Why?
Yeah.
They're coming to take advantage of all the things that we have to offer.
We're going to pay for all that. We're going to pay.
Yeah. And then we don't get nothing.
They're not paying for you regardless of immigrants. Yeah. That's the problem. They're wasting all this money on regime change wars.
Regime change wars. They wasted all this money on the military-industrial complex, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, all these fucking companies, fucking destabilized countries in Guatemala and Honduras and Venezuela, Bolivia, all these fucking places. They're trying to destabilize the countries because they don't want a fucking socialist country, because they don't want to have another example in the world where it shows that fucking socialism by brown people fucking works.
Yeah.
They really don't. They really don't.
They're like, they're giving them free education. Oh, no, we can't have them see that. They're giving them free health care. Oh, no, we can't let them see that. But there's also the other part, too, as well, John. They want the resources for the corporations to extract as well. It's a triple-headed dragon. Kill socialism and then go out there. Socialism always leads to communism. It always does. Like, no, it doesn't, asshole. And you live in a quasi-socialist country anyways. We have a lot of socialist entities. And so stop bashing socialism, and then that manufactures consent for them to go into these countries. And then all of a sudden, they date all the resources. We're stealing them left and right. We all know that Bolivia was also not only about crushing socialism, but it was about what?
The lithium.
Exactly.
Venezuela. Oil. Notice, and this is why I get mad at the Dem socks and the DSA members when they talk about, like the Netherlands, like it's a perfect example of social. It's like they wouldn't exist without exploiting the global South. Like the exploitation of the global South has allowed these European countries to prosper.
Exactly.
And that through like it's still capitalism, but it's just more social democracies there. And at the end of the day, people need to understand, like, the only way to stop this is to actually directly counteract our imperialism, our regime change. But what's Blinken doing? Oh, Bolivia better stop committing disastrous human rights violations. Oh, Syria, Assad. Oh, this and that. Venezuela. Like,
here's a weapons
they're not
deal
going to stop, guys. They're not going to stop. We need an anti-war movement. We need to be out in the streets against this militarism, against this imperialism, because it is directly coordinated against, it's directly affecting our immigration. So if you're an immigrant an advocate for immigrants who come into this country who are mistreated and racially, like, I mean, we go bomb their countries, or we sanction their countries, or we just remove their leaders, and then when they come here, we blame them and we're racist to them, and then we mistreat them. So it's like, what the hell, guys? Like, what is the solution? The solution is to go after imperialism. And I think that the short-term solution is to abolish ICE 100%, but abolish also the defund the Pentagon, abolish the CIA, because the CIA are the ones who went in there and did these regime changes. Let's not forget that. And to also like have a system of asylum. Like give them asylum to come in. And like, I don't know, we have a disastrous homeless population issue, but don't think that we're not dealing with that because of these immigrants. They're not dealing with it because they don't give a shit, because they just want to push poor people out. It's a war on poverty. It's a war against working class people. That's the fucking war that we're fighting here.
Remove all bases from the global south. End of story. Remove all bases. Get them out of there. Get them out of there. Remove all the bases.
You know what's the worst part is that they destabilize these countries, and they give them weapons too, right? They give the weapons there so they can kill each other. Yeah. And then also, they try to, if a country does play ball, they completely capitalize it. Right. Like Peru, like Colombia.
Colombia is the best example.
Look at Peru. Like, now you got KFC, McDonald's. We've been there. And
isn't that crazy?
Proving people are getting fat.
Exactly.
Like, they're trying to kill them.
Yes.
They're trying to kill them through capitalism.
Keep them fat and uneducated. They ain't going to want to leave the house for revolution, and they don't know what the hell's going on. They'll blame the guy who looks different than them across the street. Divide and conquer. Whitney Webb says it all the time. It's easy to divide us, and then the elite's got to be going, ha, and here you go. Once again, how do you make tribes, fam? You give different language for different groups. There you go.
Yeah, let's look at this meme we posted on our Instagram. 2020. As you can see here. Oh, you do it, Pasta.
As you can see here, at the southern border, President Trump keeps kids in cages. 2021. Whereas President Biden keeps children in safe and migrant facilities. More at 11.
Yeah, I mean...
MSM. Mainstream media.
I mean, that's basically what's happening, guys. Like, I mean, that's basically what they're trying to do. We cannot let them get away with this.
I would like to see somebody's opinion who's... I've debated them before, talk about mitigating damage, that President Trump wasn't doing anything for my people, is what he said. Mm-hmm. I want to see his opinion right now. I want to see what that person has to say. You know who you are. What do you have to say? Are you wrong? Or are you going to just tell me that my opinion is privileged because I'm white? Which one is it, pal? You got how many more kids? Rebecca Parson laid it out. The most Trump had in cages, 2,600. Joe Biden has 12,000 kids in cages.
And so we were talking about AOC, right? We've been criticizing
spit there. My bad. I got emotional.
We were criticizing AOC, and it seems like AOC watched the Convo Couch, because she got a question from somebody demanding her, why are you not talking about immigration like you used to? And this was her answer. If you click on it, that one.
So let's talk about this, because so much of our national conversation, which is not a conversation about immigration, is driven by people who could not care less about immigrants. So often people want to say, why aren't you talking about the border crisis? Or why aren't you talking about it in this way? Well, we're talking about it. They just don't like how we're talking about it, because it's not a border crisis. It's an imperialism crisis. It's a climate crisis. It's a trade crisis. And also, it's a carceral crisis, because as I have already said, even during this term and this president, our immigration system is based and designed on our carceral system. So those are some of the problems. What about the solution? Well, number one, our solutions need to be rooted in foreign policy, because our interventionist history in foreign policy and history over decades of destabilizing regions drive people to migration. But people don't want to have that conversation. Secondly, let's talk about...
Okay, so I don't know how you guys take this, because that part, I've been waiting for her to say that for God knows how long.
My God.
And she literally says this, note the date on this, right after she got attacked for literally not talking about any of it and just tweeting about it, not doing anything to oppose it. She's not calling out Biden, the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, all of these people by name. She's giving a generalized thing that now will give her cred with, once again, with progressives, right? So when Eric
for fanboys
was talking about, when Eric was talking about how she is there to give credibility to the Democratic Party. That's what she's there for, to give socialist cred to the Democratic Party. Like, oh, see, if you're a socialist, come join our party. That's what she's doing right here. That's what she's doing. Is she right? Absolutely. This is what we've been saying for fucking years now. We've been talking. We just got done talking about. Is she what? Absolutely, AOC. Agree. Let's fucking do it then. Let's talk about foreign policy. I want to see you bring up what happened to Honduras under Obama and Hillary Clinton.
And
Let's
Biden.
talk about it. Let's bring in some people to talk about Honduras and how we removed Manuel Zelaya. Let's talk about what we did to the Central American countries to the global south and how we continue to do it. Let's talk about you
Haiti.
going back about how you were going to defer to caucus leadership on Venezuela.
Yeah.
How about you say I was wrong? Let me not defer to caucus leadership anymore. I think we need to stay out of these countries. I want to see that. I don't want to see an Instagram video of her going
let's
to
see a
her
press
fucking
conference of the
Yeah.
NDAA.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Good job, AOC.
Yeah, let's
Good job. Come on.
let's call out
Let's do
the National Endowment for Democracy and what they're doing everywhere. Let's
Yep,
see you
let's
call
do
out that.
it.
But this is not the
OAS.
first time. The OAS. This is not the first time, fam. The first time we caught this shit. You were at that rally in Venice when she said, literally after chastising
Tulsi
Gabbard, our foreign policy is our domestic policy. Now she throws this out there, and this is like the progressive red meat, but there's no actions behind these words.
Right.
In fact, there's inaction behind these words.
Or there's direct opposing
action behind these
Biden,
words.
who's one of the architects of that shit,
Yes.
elected.
Yes.
Why isn't she naming Biden?
Yeah.
Why? Like, that's the issue I have with her.
Yeah.
You can no longer, guys, do not let people dupe you, politicians especially, by what they say on Instagram videos, on Twitter, when you don't see action following through. When they're not calling out the perpetrators of this. Who is in charge of this administration right now? It's Joe fucking Biden.
Yeah.
You can no longer just blame Republicans because guess what? Donald Trump followed the same policies that Barack Obama had before him, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. It's actually gotten worse now.
Well,
so,
Biden was the linchpin, fam, for Iraq.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. Once again, Joe Biden was the linchpin for Iraq, pushing the Iraq war in the Senate, okay? And he was all about it. And I don't want to keep saying this stuff as well because, once again, they're both bad in foreign policy. But we've said it before that Joe Biden, at least I feel this, I'm going to just put it on myself, Joe Biden's worse in foreign policy than Donald Trump. Not that Donald Trump was good, but I think Joe Biden was worse. And how are you going to sit there and defend this guy?
He's 40 years of
47 years of standing behind every single fucking war out
imperialist
there.
fucking shit.
yeah, he has a worse record. There's no denying that. That is a fact.
Not that Donald Trump was the peace president.
No,
I don't want to
he
say
wasn't.
that,
Right.
but when we talk about foreign policy, just awful. And actually supporting neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. I mean, it's so many things when it comes to Joe Biden. It's just completely awful. So now you're saying all this shit. All right,
Well,
why
thank
don't you
you for
show some
saying
action?
it.
Why don't you say anything about Blinken's tweet about letting people go who started a coup in their country?
In Bolivia. Why aren't
Indigenous
we,
people taking back their country.
Exactly. Like, there needs to be more substance to this. Like, I will applaud her for even saying it. Not applaud, but just say good job, AOC, for saying it.
Maybe like one,
but
two,
we
three
need,
claps.
yeah, a Nancy clap.
Couple Nance claps.
But yeah, like, come on, let's see some action then. Why are you not calling them out by name? Why aren't you doing these things by name? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah. Johnny, anything else about that? Because this shit just, once again, this is not the first time she's done this shit.
No, it's not.
And she did one of these, guys. She did one of these.
Yeah, the way she did it, she
did
was.
one of these?
You saw the first part, right? That where somebody asked her, "Why aren't you talking about this?"
So those are, and so
That's the like.
are you for real?
Like, no, are
So
you
let's
for
talk
real?
about this
like,
because
are you for real? Yes, we're for real. Why? Because everybody fucking noticed, even people who like you. So
often and also
yeah, we're fucking for real.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say is that I agree with Fred Hampton's Ghost. He said on our YouTube chat, he said, we need to take matters into our own hands. Stop expecting action. We're not really expecting action.
No,
but
we're just.
we're
Calling
putting
it
it
out
out
there.
to everybody, so then people can share this clip and be like, "See, AOC's a fraud, and she's not doing shit. There needs to be more action than talk.
Yep.
Pressure politics won't work. We need class-independent politics and power." How do we get there? We need to
Start with rallies in the street.
Yeah.
Join us for the fuck censorship movement, the anti-war movement, and the Dash for Assange on the 11th.
The thing is that if you simulate what Fred Hampton did in the Black Panthers back in the 1960s, and there's going to be a big deep state opposition to you, and you're going to have operatives in there. You know, we can try and simulate that. Free food, free healthcare. You know, walk the talk, right? So that's something that I want to put out there. If anybody, I think that'd be a good first step. That's why Food Not Bombs was pretty fucking interesting when we had Keith McHenry on.
Yeah,
that was really interesting because he was providing food. Yeah. Okay, that's a good step. What if we can get some nurses there to provide free healthcare now?
Yeah.
And then we're building it. We keep building it.
But that's even, you could even look at Echo Park as an example of that. They were trying to do that with the homeless population.
But they'll shut that shit down.
And they'll shut that shit down. But guess what? Start it up again. What else are you going to do? You want this to be like a bigger and bigger thing that happens all over the country, because then that will show the world, hey, you know, America is not like this. This is the people now taking, their matters into their own hands, and they can't even do that. So what do you want people to do? You're giving people no other solutions. They have to find their own solutions. Stop relying on politicians. 100% agree with that. We're just pointing it out. Yeah. Like, we're not expecting anything from these people anymore. We're just pointing it out and saying, okay, well then do something about it. Prove us wrong. Prove us wrong, AOC. Go fucking do something about it.
She's such a show.
Go do something about
prove
it.
us wrong. Like, fucking.
Yeah, I want to be wrong about that stuff.
Yeah,
and,
I do.
You know, I have a friend of mine, Jackie Santino, Vinny's wife. She would actually, before the pandemic, she would spend 2 days out of the week doing free therapy for a battered woman. And there are things like that can get done. You know, like we talked about, providing the food, providing therapy for people on their day off, mutual aid. That's a very strong ideology, and it's something we need to move closer to and stuff like that, because we have to take matters into our own hands. That's what we are doing. Fred Hampton's Ghost, we're trying to take to the streets, and that's all we did. That's why we started this channel. We didn't hear it to be, I didn't start this channel to be a pretty celebrity on the couch, even though I am.
He is,
but it was not. Just kidding. I started this because we felt we felt obligated, that we had to do our part. That we had to provide some form of significance to what we thought was going wrong in front of our very own eyes, because we paid attention to it. We're political junkies. So we're like, all right, well, let's transform our mentality and put it out there so more people listen, learn, and watch, and we learn from them too as well. I mean, we've changed on ideologies over the years and certain things too as well, because we brought the conversation together to the table. And we thank you all that have joined us here today and every day to do so, because that's what it's all about. Having these conversations. It starts with conversations, but that's the scary part right now. They're demonetizing us, and they're keeping us down. They're trying to silence the conversation.
Silence the opposing voice to the fucking state-run propaganda.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Christopher Dobby says, Fee, you should look into Professor Stephen Keen's work on the actual economic system we live in. Okay.
Stephen King?
No, Stephen Keen.
Okay, Keen. I'm like...
My Brooklyn tongue gets in the way. Stephen Keen. Thank you so much, Christopher Dobby, for the Super Ray, and BX Commie at BX Commie. Reminded that AOC and Rashida, who is also a DSA member, voted to fund DHS and ICE on their first day of office. Literally, after running on a platform that included abolishing ICE.
The
writing was on the wall since day one.
That's the one I was referencing when you were mentioning something. I have to find it, but that's what I was referencing.
Literally,
did vote
on day one, after running on a platform that included abolishing ICE, their writing was on the wall since day one. I'm here, Medhurst, on the Convo Couch. This is my Medhurst thing. I'm going to say some stuff that looks a little bit controversial, but I'll never go over the line, and I'll be okay with us bombing Iran. Is there anything to say about that?
Assad is a brutal dictator.
A brutal dictator like Assad. Johnny, anything on that subject before we get off AOC?
Nope.
All right, good. Just bottom line, fugazi, phony, gaslighting, bullshit. You don't care about anything. We've been saying this stuff for this is what we said day one on the Convo Couch. Our foreign policy is one of the biggest issues. Yep. It's leading to migration. All those Trump people that say, we got to build a wall. We shouldn't let so many migrants in the country. Well, how about we stop fucking around in those countries and they won't come? Let's try it. If that makes you nationalist to say we should close down our bases and bring our shit home, then do it. because I'm against giving the foreign aid because the foreign aid never goes to where it needs to go.
No, it always goes to weapons manufacturers.
99% of the time, and Jesse Ventura said this, he says foreign aid is taking money away from poor people in the first world and giving it to rich people in the third world. Because you don't know what happens when that money gets there. It's usually used for weapons. It's usually used, if some of it's used for good, it's just for eye candy to say, look what this agency's doing. They built a school, and that school's never used. Bullshit. Let's pull back. We have earned the right to say that we no longer should be in these bases around the country. American citizens, come home, stop spending our dollars there, defund the Pentagon, bring the shit home, because it's about making individuals and corporations billions of dollars while the masses suffer. The masses.
100%, fam. So just a couple things that we had
in the news.
So YouTube is now, we kind of mentioned it earlier on the show, gonna remove the dislikes. So it says, in response to creator feedback around well-being and targeted dislike campaigns, we're testing a few new designs that don't show the public dislike count. If you're a part of the small experiment, you might spot one of these designs in the coming weeks. Example below. So it doesn't show you the amount of dislikes.
You know why?
Creators, you'll still be able to see the exact number of likes and dislikes in YouTube Studios. For viewers, if you're in the experiment, you can still like or dislike a video to share feedback with creators and help tune the recommendations you see on YouTube. Okay, so I wonder who's going to be the example. Oh, geez. CNN, MSNBC, mainstream media, Biden, who got so many dislikes on his press conference that everybody saw.
My tweet. Yeah.
Come on, guys.
I put that on my tweet, the very next tweet in there, Johnny. What did I say? Blah, 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 blah. It's here. I said ridiculousness. After Joe Biden's first press conference, so many outlets that posted it on their channels have more dislikes than likes. This isn't about proving anything. This is about hiding public opinion about your puppet. Please go ahead, but please go ahead and gaslight us some more. And that's the truth, fam. They're trying to hide what the actual public consent is. All right, the fact that so many people were disliking it and stuff like that, and also it hurts with their algorithm, right? Yeah. So if they have too many dislikes, whatnot, in other words, they don't want you to see that the public is calling bullshit on a lot of these people trying to push their propaganda the way Joe Biden was. That's all it is.
No, YouTube still promotes them.
Yeah.
But now this will be an excuse to be like, oh yeah, they don't know. No, people don't know the amount of dislikes that they have. Yeah. They're actually getting a lot of likes. That's why they're being promoted.
This
but
is
really,
bullshit.
In the background, you see they have more dislikes than fucking likes.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I hated about Twitter is there's no dislike button.
I swear, like, this is, I want some hackers to get in on this. Like, hint, hint, cough, cough, because this shouldn't be allowed, because this is just manufacturing more consent for the state narratives and crushing any sort of dissent. That's a form of censorship. You're censoring people from seeing what's really going on. I mean, it's stupid, but it is still a form of censorship if you allow only likes.
Propaganda.
Just remove all of it then. Yeah. Just remove most of it. It's propaganda, and it's crazy.
Or just leave it.
Like that. Yeah, we'll leave it. But
just leave it.
But I just can't, like, this is what we're moving into, guys. They control the narrative. This is cryptic fascism. You have to remember, by the way, who owns YouTube? Google. Okay. Alphabet. Okay. Who donated massive amounts of money to the Joe Biden campaign? Oh, gee, they did. Millions and millions of dollars. How much more than the Trump?
Big Tech gave Biden $16 million. They gave Trump less than $1 million. Big Tech.
Yeah, but Big Tech includes these people.
Oh, includes these people.
Absolutely.
So Susan Wojcicki is an old school. She's a CEO or head of YouTube. She's an old school donator of the Clinton administration and a big Biden supporter. Johnny, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So under that post, someone was like, well, how will viewers quickly be able to know the general rating of the video and whether or not they should invest time into watching something? Time is valuable. Bad decision. Dislike. Right? And then they responded. They said, viewer feedback is an important part of YouTube, but we've heard from creators that the current experience can negatively impact their well-being.
Oh, yeah.
We also know that public dislike counts sometimes motivate targeted campaigns of dislikes on some videos. And then, so I retweeted this. I'm like, the creators they're referencing here are most likely mainstream media.
Exactly.
They're listening to the mainstream media. YouTube consistently pushes mainstream media videos, which have no reason to be pushed when they have so many dislikes. If they got rid of the dislike, they can push mainstream media even more, you know, even though behind the door they have more dislikes. I feel like they're tailoring, they've been tailoring YouTube specifically for the mainstream media, and it's supposed to reflect just like the fucking TV propaganda.
Yep.
It's gonna be exactly like that.
That's
what
fascism.
it's getting to. That's what it's getting to.
Yeah. By the way, Johnny, you know what this means? Ladies and gentlemen, get on over to Rokfin, Rokfin. F this YouTube bullshit. They're trying to censor. They're trying to push their own narrative, and they're trying to silence the voice of the people. And come join the Rokfin revolution now.
And like our videos, too, on YouTube more than you have before, because this is part of it.
We never get that kind of bad rating.
We don't. And that's the thing. Like, even if you do, on occasion, whatever, but mainstream media gets it all the time. That's who they're protecting. They're protecting their narrative. This is going to crush independent media even more. That's why it's so important. It's not just as superfluous as a like or dislike button. It is that it is protecting the state propagandist. It is protecting the state narrative. It is crushing dissent. It is completely censoring people from knowing what is actually the popular opinion or what people are seeing as valuable versus what they're not. And it's really, really dangerous. And this just once again is a reason why we are like literally like all, telling you get on Rokfin, because this is gross. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. This is going to continue getting worse and worse and worse. Do not censor yourself for YouTube. Do not try to placate to these powerful people, because they have zero reason to listen to you. They're fine. They'll be fine if mainstream media goes on there and takes over. Like, that's what they want. They're trying to push us all out.
In fascist Germany, only the state's voice can be heard. All other dissenting voices have been niet.
You need like more like black or elegant
We
mustache.
are going to talk about Syria now.
Fam. So Vanessa Beeley, who is in Syria right now, posted this about 18 hours ago, saying, thanks to the U.S. coalition illegal occupation of Syria, oil fields, and resource theft, land grab by U.S. proxies, including Kurdish Contras, fuel queues are outrageous, people sleeping in cars for 2 days, #Damascus, fuel delivery to rural areas once a week, electricity hours per day 4, many or less. Damascus streets are empty, public transport barely functioning. I have seen endless fights in fuel queues, prices soaring despite government efforts to lower inflation. Biden policy is to grind Syria to a halt, crush morale, leading to an election in April/May. This is what she was talking about when she was on here. People, please stop focusing on, quote, humanitarian bullshit you are fed by the US-UK soft power complex. The real psychopaths are in power. Nothing will ever change until their lies become irrelevant and we focus on the dominant predators at the top of resource chain globally.
Exactly.
Syria, China. That's 100% exactly what's happening. Again, she talked about how there's training these NATO-backed militias against Syrians. And this is what we do, right? We destabilize. Here's an example. Destabilize a country via sanctions, via inflation, via oil, right? Like controlling their, trying to get price guides them out of oil. These people start fighting among each other. Then there's an election. And when we see a weakened country, what do? We remove the democratically elected leader, or we feign a false unfair election, and we go in there and we say, no, this election wasn't fair. Oh no, we need to make sure that Assad, the brutal dictator, is pushed away, and we need to put in a Democrat, a very democratic leader. And Syria, come on, we'll be your ally. And that's what's happening right now. Like, in basic terms, in baby terms, that is literally what's happening right now. That is a form of what we do.
And Blinken, though,
everywhere else.
Blinken putting down that we give more money to Syria than any country around, whatnot. I mean, it's got to enrage some people. I saw Dick Medhurst get really pissed off at Blinken for saying this shit. I mean, all they do is they lie and they gaslight you on a regular basis and make you think, oh, how can you stand up for a brutal dictator? United States is giving so much money in aid. No, we're not. We're tearing the country limb from limb away from each other, and it's death, destruction, famish, people sleeping in the car. This is terrible. And what did Donald Trump do? We got to take the oil. We got to take the oil. I mean, same bullshit. Get the hell out of the country. Why are we there in the first place? Get the hell out of Syria. How come nobody's asked? How come the squad hasn't said, oh, AOC, it's our foreign policy? How come you're allowing this shit to go on in Syria?
When did we...
Which is leading to a crisis and a blockade and death in Yemen as well. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, you're 100% right at your outrage, because when did Syria get bombed by the United States? Can we just look that up real quick? Because it's been that many days and still no word from AOC.
But then Assad gasses his people.
Yeah, the only one, like I said something was Ilhan Omar, and it was still very much like rooted in, Assad is still a dictator, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're still manufacturing consent for us to be there under a humanitarian bullshit. And Vanessa Vili is 100% right. Stop letting these people freaking manufacture these lies and peddle these lies. This is coming from Vanessa Vili, who's literally there, right? Yeah. She's literally there. Literally. Like, I don't know how much more clear it can get. Richard Medhurst talks about Syria all the time, and it's like, these people have family there. You cannot get closer to what is happening in Syria. Yet the vast majority of even the left continues to listen to CIA talking points regarding Assad. I don't give a shit about your opinion about Assad. That your opinion about Assad is irrelevant. You're not a Syrian. Get the hell out. Stay away. Stop talking. Like, you're supporting Assad, a brutal dictator. I don't care.
That's their game plan.
I don't care what you think about Assad. Though. It doesn't matter how you feel about Assad. They don't, what? Do you care about what every world leader is doing? No. You only care when the fucking CIA narrative gets out there and they tell you Assad is a brutal dictator and we have to spread humanitarian aid, which is never humanitarian aid. It's actually dehumanizing people, is sanctioning them and hurting them, and waging war, whether it's through drones, whether it's through sanctions, whether it's through regime change. All of this is a mechanism of our empire that is killing people all the time, and it has to stop.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, you think if we asked a family in Honduras if they would rather have United States aid or just have us get out, what do you think their answer would be?
Oh, get the fuck out.
Exactly. Last but not least, we want to just talk about this. I brought up this tweet and stuff like that because this is a person we talk about, when it comes to Medicare for All. One of the big things, not only just helping mental health issues and stuff like that, but it's the insulin issue in this country and stuff like that, and how insulin has been so expensive. A daily reminder that the insulin I've used for 24 years, Humalog, has gone from $21 a vial to $270 a vial with no changes to the insulin itself. That's a 1,200% increase on that product. I die in 2 days without it. 3 months equals $2,267.99. We need federal insulin prices caps to survive. Just want to remind you that Joe Biden struck down an executive order from Donald Trump on insulin, and this shit's been coming. A lot of people have been coming on talking about this left and right and stuff like that. We've seen people die because they have to ration their insulin and they don't have the money to do it, and they end up dying, and a mother has to make a decision whether to give her kid insulin or put food on the table for her other children is torn from left to right. It's terrible. It's disgusting. And I just want to remind everybody, this is not mitigating damage.
Not at all. Not at all. It is continuing the raping and pillaging of the working class and of poor people. Yeah, there's a war on poverty, and it's against poor people, and we need to fucking come together and stop fighting each other and understand that we're all screwed. No matter what, if you suffer from diabetes and you're a Trumper, you're still equally as screwed as somebody who's a leftist or a Democrat or a shit lib, whatever. Like, if you're poor, you're fucking poor, and you're all gonna suffer, and that's what we need to really fucking focus on right now.
Yeah,
100%.
We had a situation the other day where a 5-year-old was belittled by a police officer. Now Johnny's got something up over here from a 6-year-old. I guess the cops are getting a little bit better. It's a year older, John.
Yeah, so there was this. I saw this on Instagram. It says when a 6-year-old is dragged to court for picking a tulip. Read the North Carolina story. So this is happening in North Carolina. There's a little picture here. It says a 6-year-old dangled his legs above the floor as he sat at the table with his defense attorney before a North Carolina judge. He was accused of picking a tulip from a yard at his bus stop. His attorney, Julie Boyer, said, and he was on trial in juvenile court for injury to real property. The boy's attention span was too short to follow the proceedings, Boyer said, so she handed him crayons and a coloring book. He was arrested for picking a tulip while he waited for a bus. Someone called the police on a 6-year-old black boy because he picked a flower. Police arrested him. He had to go to court with a criminal defense attorney who gave him a coloring book to sit still. And he said, "We are hated." Now, this stuff happens, and I just wanted to just show that this stuff happens, Like this actually happened in North Carolina, This is ridiculous.
Beyond ridiculous.
It's a power thing, I think, too, not just a racial thing. Again, a lot of these people are picked and chosen specifically because they follow orders and they enjoy power. My interaction with the LAPD officers who refused to let me through to meet, Johnny and Glory, who are on the other side, like you could just see like they love having power over you. Like it is just, was just, no, I am the authoritarian now. I get to dictate who comes and who goes. They love being gatekeepers. It is a mentality
That's why
thing
they
too.
take that job.
Exactly. And that whole system, you can't reform that. Again, that has to completely be redone because all the mechanisms for choosing these people and who they choose, that's part of it. Like I would choose different people in a different system that wouldn't necessarily be gloating for power. That would be a community. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to serve the community. How are you serving the community by taking a 6-year-old and charging them with a criminal offense for picking a fucking flower? I mean, it doesn't matter even if a child is having a tantrum, even if a child is like screaming into the air and hitting things and throwing things, he's a fucking child.
6 years old.
Shit. Like,
the other kid was 5 years old with this other cop and stuff. And then when you hear this, and in particular case with the 5-year-old, there was a man of color cop and a man of color boy. But just hearing the police officer talk, it's like, man, if I would have ever done this when I'm young, and it's like, well why are you a police officer if you can't relate the way things were fucking 40, 50 years ago and the way they are now? And why should that even play into the fact and justify your actions of a 5-year-old who can't grasp things? You know what I'm saying? And it was disgusting. We have to, when you talk about you can't reform this, you got to restart over. What if we restart over? The way we pick police has to change.
Yeah,
has to change because a lot of these people who are police officers shouldn't be police officers. I know there's some of you out there that say police do have a hard job and they do a lot of great things and stuff, and I'm sure there are some good police out there, but there are way too many bad apples that get into the system, and it's just the whole system itself is a bad apple. It needs to be changed. It's just like election. We don't need election reform. We need election revolution. Johnny, what happened on Amazon now?
So there's been reports that Amazon has been making like fake Twitter accounts. And just look at this. So Bert at OK4, husband, father, happy Amazon employee.
Got a lot of followers there.
9 following, 0 followers. Joined March 2021, and you can see the post he did. The only post he did. Unions are good for some companies, but I don't want to have to shell out hundreds for a month just for lawyers. #Amazon. #Amazon unions. This is real. Yeah. And you can see that they didn't try. This is a picture from Dude Perfect, I guess, and they did that. So then they changed the picture. And then they changed the picture. So
yeah, they got caught. There's a lot of reports about them. You know, we've been hearing about, that we had Chris Miles on. We've been hearing about how people had to pee in bottles. We've been hearing how there's now this. It's called the social media company is actually called Project Veritas. It's literally called that, which I guess they didn't think of the name before they put it out there, but that's what it's called. Yeah. So it's just
speaking
funny.
of cops, Johnny, Sheriff Villanueva, this is coming from our good friend at the Eviction Defense Network. Sheriff Villanueva refuses to stop lockouts for 1 day to allow tenants to go to court for additional time.
Wow.
Per the new CDC order. Okay.
Okay, Sheriff Villanueva.
All right. We'll see you soon, Chef. Sheriff.
Yeah.
We got something else, Johnny? Who else got suspended now?
So Hood Communist is a great account. They had a lot of great posts about anti-imperialism and everything like that. So they got suspended on Twitter.
Wow.
And a lot of people were making a big deal about this the last couple of days. It says, our message to the masses of colonized Africans here in the U.S. and around the world is simple. Our message is to masses of all colonized masses here in the U.S. and around the world is simple. It's time for us to fall out of the trap of disunity and recognize that we share a common enemy, the U.S. empire and Western imperialism. Yep. The same forces that enslaved and colonized us wherever we are the same forces that continue to deny us the self-determination that is necessary to carry out the work of revolution that our ancestors laid before us. That's exactly what we've been talking about this whole entire show.
Yep.
It is crucial now more than ever that all colonized populations work toward principled unity, sacrifice, and struggle. This has been our message from day one. It is a message that is shared by the organization of every editor on this team, from the Black Alliance for Peace to Black Hammer to the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Funny enough, our suspension comes after a weekend full of targeted harassment from Twitter racist and chauvinist U.S. leftists who see the idea of colonized unity within the U.S. and throughout the Third World. Our suspension comes after a weekend full of, so they repeated that, for speaking out against Cold War rhetoric directed at the Communist Party of China. All people seriously concerned with revolution must take a stand against this imperialist propaganda, wherever it may appear. As leftists in the core of the empire, we need to understand that if our message ain't Anti-imperialist, we ain't saying shit. Now that's...
Yeah. If you are only tackling racism via identity politics and voting Democrat because you think they're better than Republicans, if you're only tackling racism in the sense of, oh, these bad Trumpers, but you're not talking about imperialism, then you're not going to, not only are you not going to defeat racism, you're not tackling the economic inequality that completely fuels and exacerbates that racism.
They boost racism by fucking voting Democratic.
It does. Poor uneducated people sitting around the house don't have the first of all, they're just frantic and they're sketched out because they're living paycheck to paycheck. They can be on the streets the next day, you know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden they start pointing the finger at people who look different than them because that's why they're told, oh, well, you don't have money, you don't have a job because the immigrant has it, or you know what I'm saying? Your kids can't go to college because the person of color across the street, she's taking up all the money through affirmative action or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Affirmative action. So, I mean, that's how they're pitted and divided against each other, so it just exacerbates the problem. And that's why we have to knock them both out of the park. We can do both two things at one time. I just see a lack of focusing on the economic problems by the mainstream media and those elites out there, and they kind of push the other problems. Therefore, we won't say, hey, stop. You're not playing us anymore. You're not getting away with this. You're the problem. We're going to take you out first, then we'll work out our problems. Virginia Beach, Johnny.
This is an interesting story here, guys. Really quick. The Washington Post put out that Virginia Beach shootings, 2 dead, 8 injured after a very chaotic night, police say. 2 people were killed and 8 others were injured Friday night in Virginia Beach in multiple incidents, including a physical fight that turned into a shootout, city officials said. So there is a situation going on in Virginia. It looks like police... the VPD body camera policy was last updated. It states that officers shall activate their cameras immediately upon arriving at scene and performance of their duty. So some people got killed. Donovan Lynch was killed, and it turns out that Donovan Lynch is the cousin of Pharrell, the music producer.
Wow.
Prison is not a cure. Okay, so this was something else that's not related. Where is it? So they killed Pharrell's cousin, and now they're trying to cover it up. So apparently it looks like body cameras weren't on. There was a loss of lives, so it looks like there was something going on between police. Maybe there was a scuffle, and then there was like shootings happen when the police arrived. I think is what happened. So they started marching for this, and
I saw hashtag BLM 757.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. This is BLM 757 has been reporting on all this, or been kind of keeping up with it. So there was something here. Hold on, I'm just trying to pull it up. So here, Jafari says, breaking news. So apparently they were marching against what happened, right? Allegedly, the Virginia police officer who allegedly murdered Donovan Lynch is the same officer who violently arrested Jafari, who we interviewed.
Yep.
Grabbing him by the testicles, placing him in a key lock hold, and taunting him once he was in jail. His buddies choked and placed their knee on my back to the point I literally had to say I can't breathe. He is also the same officer who stalked me the next day to a dark shell station surrounded by a cop's car. The FOIA request was sent via lawyers in September for this harassing to stop. Remember he talked about it in the interview how they got that, they got all these FOIA requests to come out. Here it's almost April and they have yet to deliver the FOIA request. They're supposed to deliver the FOIA request. This is also the same officer who violently arrested a Caucasian peaceful protester, snatching him off the sidewalk. The protester beat his charges and still doesn't have FOIA requests. This officer has a pattern of violence and has gone unchecked due to the city of Virginia Beach not have a citizens review board, leading up to him allegedly murdering Donovan Lynch.
You want to play a little of the video?
They're saying that VPD murdered 17-year-old Joyner, murdered Navy veteran India Krager, murdered Pharrell's cousin Donovan Lynch, and don't let them murder again. So it looks like police murdered somebody in that, and then they were marching for it. So here's the video.
What are they doing? Now, why did they have to do that? And why was he going for the flag? That's Safari?
The thing with them is they're not just they're militant. The police don't.
Last one down the way.
Wow. So they were just marching, and then that happened.
I mean, look, he's doing nothing but marching with a megaphone. Like, why is he getting arrested? Make no mistake about it. They don't like Jafari and this group because they expose that police department for who they are and the bad things they do. So now this is like retaliation right here.
Yeah, and
they are pissed off at these guys because these guys have been telling it like it is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They're even more dangerous because they're actually talking to people like the Boogaloo Boys or people who are just against the establishment, whether or not they agree on 100% of everything. And it's kind of interesting. Like, I think that is far more dangerous to the police state and everything than somebody that is a chapter that's politicized for Democrats, right? It's a lot more dangerous because you're uniting more people together.
Fam, Johnny, you want to show my cookbook? All right, that's it. You got anything else? All right, ladies and gentlemen, long show today. Thank you for hanging on in. A lot of great things, great guests, good conversations. Well, it is, but, we always chop them up, and we like the fact that you guys go out there and share our videos. Mm-hmm. We now have the clips posted up on Rokfin, the majority of them. Every once in a while, we'll drop one on YouTube. Let's not forget, on April 11th, come join the action. We are going to get to the streets. We're going to go to the CNN building, the CBS buildings. We're going to let these people know what's what. We're going to speak out for Julian Assange.
Johnny, pull that up. It's on Steve's, or mine Twitter. I don't know. Or Steve's, whoever you find first.
Well, if I'm going to smack you across the face with a giant mackerel if you ever say that again.
So we have honed in the location. I will be creating an event both on Facebook and on our Fuck Censorship website. We will have the information on. Basically, we have a panel for organizers and independent media in general, but mainstream media is not going to cover this, where we're inviting them to really ask questions, to be informed on Assange, what happened, why there's a 2-year, it's a 2-year anniversary since he was taken from the Ecuadorian embassy, why Assange is important, any questions you have to ask regarding that, what he exposed through the cables, how that's connected to foreign policy and imperialism, and how those things could potentially connect to every single issue that progressives and leftists care about, whether that be healthcare for all, whether it be increase in wage, whether it be housing, homelessness, any issue, like anything that is of your community, how everything is directly connected. There is no separation from our domestic and our foreign policy, and directly why Julian Assange is more than just a person, and why we are all Assange in other terms, and why we will continue fighting against censorship, not just by mainstream media and big corporations and big tech, but the entire apparatus of the military industrial complex and the national security state and their CIA or intelligence agencies that do their work for them. And like, if we get taken down, then you guys don't get access to this information, and we are completely being targeted by YouTube, by mainstream media, by all these people who completely use our work while we get demonetized. So we're pissed, and we have found even more people who have been using our work. We're going to talk about that later, but right now we are fighting back against that. And just so you know, we are going to continue pushing this activism. I believe all of you who say, let's get in the streets, let's just do it.
There you go.
This is do it. Like, help us. We're in LA, and there's other events happening for the 2-year anniversary of Julian Assange being taken from the Ecuadorian embassy in Seattle, Washington, and Washington, D.C., and even in Denver, Colorado. This is happening. This is an international solidarity
event
event
going on as well.
Absolutely.
We heard and stuff like that. L.A. Stand Up. Join Action for Assange and the Convo Couch and everyone around the world who has already said they're getting in the streets on April 11th to mark the 2 years of solitary confinement, torture, and abuse of process for Julian Assange. Hashtag, we are all Julian Assange. Fam.
And so the protest is on Sunday, April 11th, and it'll be approximately at
12 p.m.
12 p.m.
We're going to meet at the CBS building on Sunset and Gower, right near the Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
Hey.
And move down Hollywood Boulevard to the CNN building.
Not all that.
We are marching for them to drop the charges, to let everybody know that journalism is not a crime, and to free Julian Assange right now. The Fuck Censorship movement and the Convo Couch will be joining this here as well. So we'll be speaking our minds, yelling, fuck CNN, fuck Fox, fuck all the mainstream media in the streets, because they really need to go to hell. Google, Alphabet, you're a big part of that too. United States government with your censorship, and now trying to remove your dislikes to hide the unpopularity that you have as a government is another form of fascism, and we gotcha.
Exactly. And every single issue has been affected by the lack of coverage of Julian Assange, because they don't cover him, because they also aren't covering the homeless crisis in the way they should be. They're not covering the housing crisis. They're not talking about Medicare for all. They're not talking about Joe Biden's immigration facilities. They're not talking about that. The vast majority of them, they're not even allowed to. And now that some of it's coming out, believe me, they're going to rein it in and spin it in a different way. That's why it's important. That's why we're important. Journalism is not a crime. Join us in LA. Join us in LA. Let's make this a bigger protest. I've gone to so many protests in LA. We need to continue pushing this. If you're a progressive and this is not your issue, join us, and I will show solidarity when you're fighting for Medicare for all, because I have already done that. Right. I've already been out there on Force to Vote. Three protests we have done, maybe actually 4 if you count the other one. 4 protests we have actually done since the beginning of 2021. This would be our 5th. So come on, we're waiting on people to join us. All of these issues are connected. Please share this event. Continue supporting us, and please support the Action for Assange team that is bringing some people here and taking that expense and to do this, to actually inform people more on Assange. A lot of people don't know about that. A lot of the activists here on the ground don't know anything about First Amendment rights, press freedoms, or Julian Assange, and why it's important and how it's connected. So we're trying to bridge that gap and connect these people to each other. So
for Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella,
Johnny Sue on those 1s and 2s.
Convo out.
We'll see you
Expose
at the
the
rally.
motherfuckers.
Do it.